Hello and welcome back to the SuperShow podcast. Another week has gone by, which means we have another week's worth of gaming news, hot takes, and trash opinions to give you. This week, I'm joined by the one and only Jamie. How the hell are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you for having me, Mr. Jones. I'm glad that we're both here to hold down the fort. Sadly, no CJ, which means he gets to miss out on all the fun.
He does, although I need to stop you right there. My wife would kick off if she heard you say, hold down the fort, you American. What? It's hold the fort. What are you holding down?
I don't know.
You can see the culture leaching into your brain through the internet.
How did that saying get changed then? Where did the word down come from and how did it get inserted into that if it doesn't mean anything?
Americans say hold down the fort.
But why did they put the word down? Do forts work differently out there? Are they functioning in a strange way over the Atlantic?
Yeah, they like to squash forts and hold them down, not let them out.
I see.
What do they? I could care less.
Oh yeah, that's an annoying one.
Makes no sense.
Another one, and this is probably, in fact, almost certainly a British one, and it's not quite as frustrating as the one you just said from a grammatical perspective, but it does make me raise an eyebrow, is when S's either get lost or get switched around when people are shortening for fuck's sake, and you get a lot of fuck's sake or fuck's sakes and things like that. And
yeah,
I don't know.
Wow,
that's a weird one to get.
S's.
Yeah, it's a weird one to get hung up on, but it's for the sake of the fuck. Don't forget the thing that's being saked. Don't
forsake the fuck. That's what we're trying to say.
Don't forspoken the fuck. Don't fuck forspoken.
Exactly. And what you should give a fuck about is video games. This week, we're going to be mostly talking about Opening Night Live, where Geoff Keighley once again brought us the opening night of GamesCom, which is in Germany, if you didn't know. And we're also, after we've talked about sort of a few of the games that he has shown off, a few little world premieres, a few little extra bits of trailers and things from games that we've seen before, we're also going to touch on the PlayStation VR 2 and maybe even some other news from the week if we've got time.
Depends how long we spend talking about Saints Row.
Yeah, yes, it does. That is not yet, though. That is when we get to the catch-up, which is going to be after the little bits that I have to do, Jamie, because people need to know where they can listen to us, where they can watch us, because you can watch us in video on YouTube, as some of you probably are right now, but you can also listen to us on podcasting platforms across the interwebs. I'm talking Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, all those other podcasting platforms. We are kind of ubiquitous, so you've got no excuse to not hear us or see us on a weekly basis. We are also, there's a really weird bug that was just climbing on my keyboard. I'm just flicking it away because it was freaking me out. Anyway, we are also on Paisley Radio, paisleyradio.com, Thursdays at 10 p.m, repeated on Mondays at 10 p.m. If you want a little bit of a 90s experience brought into your life, why not check out some internet radio where you can't just choose to, skip and fast forward and do whatever. You have to listen to it. Like you're back in the garage, fixing your car and the radio's on and you're like, oh, what a great show I'm listening to today.
The voice has to change, does it? It has to go old-timey.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, it's better if we call it the wireless. If they change it from Paisley Radio to Paisley Wireless, I'll be loving it.
Wow.
So there's an idea.
I'll send an email. I'll put a good word in for you.
Drop some hints.
Yeah, exactly.
Hello and welcome to the SuperShow podcast. That's how we'll be doing it.
When we have to do a sponsored episode of this podcast for like Fallout 5 or something, and we sign a weird deal with Bethesda where we have to do that voice for the entire 2 hours, people are going to be very upset.
They will love it. That'd be it. We'd have to change whole time after that.
It will rival our collaboration with Fallout 76 for the worst sponsored idea of all time.
Very, very possibly. But you know what's not a bad idea, Jamie?
What?
Is signing up to our Patreon over at patreon.com/supershow. A number of people have already done it. They've chosen to support us, to help us keep the lights on, help us coming back week after week to do more podcasts, more super shows. And I would like to read out some of their names because they are absolute legends. There are some names on screen right now, but I would also like to give a shout out to Aaron Cameron, Athletic Gravy, Bill Caesar, Brimstone, Cole K, Ice Not Rock Salt, Jesper Camdow Nielsen, Leo Merger, Mindful Pig, Mr. Anthropic, Nathan Pears, Pastors Guild, and the big dogs. They are Brett Z, aka Shellshock, Doppler, Geometric Potter, Hacksaw McGreed, Manuel Guerrero, and Peaswad. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you for supporting us. If you would like to join our Patreon, for as little as $2, you can get access to our Discord server where you can come and chat to us, chat to some of the other patrons over there, or you can go to one of the higher tiers and you can see some of our archive content from back in the day, some behind the scenes stuff, and also some relatively new stuff as well. I'm talking about the murder thing. I don't even remember what it's called. It's been
Known Murderers?
Known Murderers.
We don't get to call that new. That's like a year old plus.
To me, that I've got pants that are 20 years old. So you know what? I'm saying that's new.
Yeah, it's all relative, I guess, at the end of the day.
Although, Jamie, that might not be new. We have got to play some new games recently. I know you have. So I would like to hear your opinions on some of them.
Shall we just jump right in?
Let's do it.
We've both been playing some Saints Row over the past week or so. I don't know how many hours deep are you right now?
I reckon maybe 2.
Oh, okay. Sure. See, I'm not a crazy amount further in. Regrettably, this isn't going to be one of those sort of post-review conversations with someone who's, finished the game. I think I'm only about in the 6 to 8 hour region.
Much further than me. Okay.
Yes. Although, if this is
this is apparently a 10 to 15 hour game, so...
Oh, is that? Okay, that's not so bad. I will say,
heard.
I looked at my percentage completed and my save file the other day, and I was like, I'm slightly further ahead than I thought I would be. Although, and I don't mean this to be too ominous a precursor to the conversation we're about to have, I would probably have clocked up a few more hours had this game not essentially forced me to put it down at a few intervals where maybe I ended up at a never-ending loading screen, or maybe a mission scripting bugged out and everything stopped happening and people stopped reacting to me, or people stopped responding to me, or a loading screen finished and my character could not move and there was nothing I could do and I couldn't even pause the game. And so, when you close an application on the PlayStation, like hard quit, and you're kind of faced with that thing of, I have to go back in, I have to load it all back up, I have to do that entire mission again and hope nothing like this repeats itself. And you kind
of 3 a.m.
And it's 3 a.m. and you just say, nah, it's not, no. That has inhibited my ability to play more Saints Row.
Do you know what? I'm actually a little bit excited to hear what you say, though, because we have not talked about this game at all.
No.
For anyone out there, there has been no pre-gaming. We haven't discussed our opinions at all. And after only 2 hours, like I said, I've played. Yeah, I'm keen to know your sort of overall opinion.
And you know what? Like this is not going to be helpful, but I will just say up front, I do still feel like I am still digesting this game. Not just because I still have more to see and more to play and more to experience, but because I've had so many thoughts, and this is one of those games where there's so much conversation around it, and it's such a minefield out there in terms of what people are saying, what people are feeling, and the experiences people are having, that, I've got a lot of different thoughts that are also floating around in my head, and I hope I can articulate them for the sake of this conversation and the sake of this podcast. What I'll say is that as the experiences I just relayed moments ago would suggest, there are large technical problems that kind of hit you over the head very early on in your time with Saints Row, and I feel like it's not even at this point one of those things where you need to put out an APB where you say that not all of these experiences will affect everyone and some people will experience this game differently. I feel pretty confident in saying that anyone who plays Saints Row in the early stages of the game's release, and certainly anyone that's played it by the time they're listening to this, will have had some kind of malfunction on a technical level as a result of the state of the game. It's undercooked. It should have been in the oven a lot longer. It's mind-boggling when you think of the fact that, this is Embracer, who we talked about so much last week, and PlayOn, kind of being able to put out their first big AAA product, having made all these acquisitions and bought these franchises and all these studios, and this is their opportunity to kind of put a flag in the ground. It's also an August release.
Are we comfortable calling it AAA?
Yes. Because do you know why I'm comfortable calling it AAA, Jonesy?
I thought the AAA thing was, we were saying if it has the financial backing and marketing budget, et cetera, et cetera. I thought that's what we'd said before, right?
Yes, we have said that before. And I think that is still the case. Although I also think that, I think we'd be surprised, given how long this has been in development for, how many employees Volition have, and so on and so forth. I don't think this is a AA game. This is a Saints Row reboot that is just Well, I was about to say been hung out to dry, but that's the thing. There's two elements to this. There's the part of it which is just like this needed more time in the oven. This didn't even need to come out in August. You could have released this game in December and earned yourself another 4 months of time to, if nothing else, polish this game and fix some of the technical hiccups and have it be a lot more stable.
That's another 4 months of paying people to work on it.
It is, and clearly that's where, the rubber met the road on this case, as has happened many times before. We sat here this time, whenever it was, a year ago, 2 years ago, time loses all meaning at some point, but with CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk. And yeah, at some point they were like, this game needs to come out. And clearly someone somewhere thought that was the case with Saints Row. But, and this is the thing I was going to come back around to, is yes, there are technical problems. Yes, there are game-breaking bugs and game-breaking glitches, and there are things that are going to stop people's progression. And there are, even if you're able to avoid the bigger issues, there are lots of small, minute issues that pop up so frequently that they are, at best annoying, and at worst just the kind of thing that makes you want to put the game down and give it some breathing space and come back to it at another time. But the most disappointing thing of all for me, as a massive Saints Row fan, of someone who has been with the Saints Row series since the very first game, the very first day, the very first game, the demo for the very first game on the Xbox 360, and cares massively about this franchise, is that even with all the technical issues put to one side, and even if they'd released a top-to-bottom polished product, this is still an average open-world crime action game. This is still an open-world game that gets a lot of its ideas and a lot of its design philosophies from the games of yesteryear. And I don't know how Volition went back to the drawing board, had a blank canvas in terms of everything and everywhere a Saints Row game can go, and decided that this was the direction it needed. Like, I don't know who they're making this game for. I don't know who needed, I don't know who needed this, and I don't know who wanted this. And I gather there are some people who are enjoying it, and I'm sure there are story moments that I've yet to reach that are engaging, and there are character arcs that I've yet to see paid off that are endearing in some respects. And I know that humor is subjective. There are things that I don't find funny that other people will find funny, but fundamentally this feels like an old game that, if it had been released, like I said, top to bottom polished in pristine condition, I think is like a 6 or 7 out of 10 open world crime game that is rooted in the titles of yesteryear. And I just think that that's, I know this is a strong word to use, but it's unacceptable. Not unacceptable because it's bad. Saints Row is not a bad game, I don't think, but it's unacceptable because this was the reboot of Saints Row. This was the game that should have marked the beginning for wherever this franchise goes next. And if I'm being totally blunt, I don't think it deserves to go anywhere next. I don't want to see a Saints Row 2 set in Santo Ileso with the same group of characters. I don't think they've earned that. I don't think they've justified that. I don't think that's in the best interest of the fans. I don't think that's in the best interest of the people who could be fans. And in that sense, I feel like they've blown it. We've waited 9 years for this franchise to come back. Like I said before, they had a completely blank canvas, and I think they've blown it. And so in some respects, the infinite loading screens and not being able to move my character, that stuff becomes the shit that I can laugh about, and you can tweet about, and you can poke fun at. It's the fact that this game is so underwhelming. The fact that this game was so happy being mediocre. Once you get past that veneer of technical hiccups, that's what bums me out the most.
Yeah, so I'm nowhere near as deep into it as you are. Like I said, I've only played like 2 hours, and I feel like one of the things I questioned was when you said AAA, was because if we're just saying if AAA, really the difference between AAA and AA is effectively money, then one thing I wonder is that the issue with this game? Was it that they weren't prepared to spend a AAA amount of money on it, but they've still tried to put out a AAA game? And maybe that's where they've decided, hey, look, we need to release this because we're at the end of the cycle. We don't want to put any more money into it. So effectively do what we can. So I've had the feeling like I'm playing, I'm not going to say a beta. I'm playing like an in-between an alpha and a beta, because some of the elements seem polished and seem actually fine. And then some other elements just seem completely undercooked, as you said. Like I've already had problems in the 2 hours I've been playing with the driving, for example. Sometimes it's actually felt fine and quite fun and stuff. Sometimes it's just, like the car just wouldn't turn right. It would only turn left. and I've got no idea what that was about. I'd have sections where the controls would just bug out and backward, and the invert Y would like have turned itself on somehow, which is like really random. And then my guys like walk it. I have to push back to walk forward, and it just gets very strange. But then other elements of it, which I think people have also said about that they don't like, which I kind of push back on a bit, is things like. But to be fair to them, I can see why they've said it. But there are things like they don't like the characters. They don't like the way that the characters are kind of ludicrous in that they're supposed to be young, Gen Z, and they're all like talking about, oh, my student loan, and I've got to fight the capitalism, and all of that. And then at the same time, they're these insane, like murdering nut jobs. But I actually think that how ludicrous that is on purpose. Like I actually don't mind that, but it's definitely underdone. Like they need to have done a lot more with the character, even like the short bit I've seen. I think they're trying to do a kind of a silly thing where, for humor, where you play a game, you play loads of games and you'll kill thousands of people, and then you'll go back to the storyline where you go and meet the wife and you chat and you go and take your kid to like soccer practice, and you're like, this is insanity. I've just blown up half of downtown and now I'm running errands for my wife, like a Grand Theft Auto or whatever. Yeah. Like that is bizarre. At least in this game,
it's called ludonarrative dissonance. I think
ludonarrative dissonance. I know you love that phrase, but I think with this, I actually think they've kind of played that for laughs, and they've sort of taken it satirically, where you've got someone going, oh yeah, I'm going to join a commune and we're going to like not spend any money and we're going to be really good about blah, blah, blah. And then 2 seconds later, you're robbing a small loans company to pay your rent. And the job that one of you, that you go and get right at the beginning of the game is as a, what do they call them? A mercenary, like just killing people for hire. And it's this kind, it plays these two things. I think it does okay in the tone in the first sort of couple of hours, but the way the game is made is just bad. Like it just there were some things that I did, like the lock on with the aiming and stuff. I thought, okay, that's a bit naff, but they have a very generous lock on and stuff. So and the way that you run around and doesn't feel amazing, but it doesn't feel too bad. I think a lot of that stuff can be fixed with polish and with updates and with things. But then just some elements of it already are starting to, like you said, like the world just seems kind of dead. There's not like, everything's very flat. Maybe it's that you later on in the game, I don't know, that you get to areas where it seems a bit more dynamic, but yeah, it does feel like a game from yesteryear with some neon lights.
Yes. Yeah. Which
to add, they've done what I've done. They've tried to zhuzh up zhuzh up the game with one well-placed purple neon light.
Yeah, because someone came in and was like, everything looks like this, like you said, very flat, very dull. It just has this sort of very yellowish tone. None of the lighting seems to have any real sort of like contrast or depth to it. What can we do? Neon, and let's put a whole gang around neon. So every time they show up, everything's colourful.
I did the character creator as well. Like I thought, at least they've done, had fun with that, and they've made the boss creator, whatever you call it, where you can go and you can mess around and you can create a character and you can change them all the time. I made a character and then I did. Yeah, I was just a bit like, okay, I can be whoever I want to be. It's one of those sorts of games, and you get into the game, but because you pick your voice, suddenly it just all falls apart. Because if you don't look right to how you sound, it's shit. And so the first voice that I picked, which I thought, oh, that sounds cool. It was like the third voice 3 or something for the guy, and it was like obviously like a young black guy has done the voice for it. And then I look like a slightly older Hispanic man in the game. I've got like grey hair, and a grey tash. And then all of a sudden, he just sounds so weird that I'm like, okay, I've got to change this. So I've changed it back to the default voice. But he sounds like a young hipster, and he looks completely. And I'm like, okay, I can't be asked to mess around with all these voices and find which looks like it fits.
I
don't know, little things like that kind of bugged me from the get.
No, I think that's totally like there are. I think asterisks next to nearly everything that Saints Row does, whether it does it, mostly successfully or mostly or largely fails at what it's trying to do. There are still asterisks next to everything.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
How do you? Okay, a question I have for you, because this is something I've already thought. If we waited 6 months for like updates and patches, I think the game will be probably in a much better position. purely because, like you've said, it's still it's going to be a 6 out of 7, even with a load of polish and a load of shine.
Yeah.
I think it will be a half decent, fun game if they
Absolutely.
can do all of that. If they can do all of that polish and shine, if they can get rid of the bad controls, the way that it feels, and do a lot of that polish. You with me there?
Yes, I am with you there. And I also think that it's totally valid for people to want or need a kind of 6 or 7 out of 10 open world crime action game in their lives. Sometimes people end up in those spots where they want to play something like a Saints Row, and then Saints Row is able to take it one step further than sort of other traditional open world action fare by it's got that extra mayhem element. And Saints Row has always got a wacky, zany sense of humor, and you're going to show up and have eventually get ridiculous weapons, ridiculous vehicles, and missions with bizarre set pieces and all that kind of stuff. That's going to be there, and I can totally see why people might want that at some point in their life. But I'm not going to back down from the hill that like the Saints Row reboot, the blank canvas on which to set up the rest of this franchise, the future of this franchise, and the blank canvas from which they had 4.5 games to learn from and to pick and choose elements from. It's not good enough in that regard. And like we talked about all the little asterisks that would appear next to everything this game does and how many of them would be sorted out. And I've had them too. I've had character creation elements reset, like my voice changed when I loaded in one time. Guy answers the phone call and is like, I'm a woman now, great. Little things like the GPS on the minimap and the GPS on the road, the arrows on the road were not the same. And also they don't disappear when you get into flying vehicles. So when you're in a helicopter and you can't tell where you're going, you have to look at the road and it thinks you're still driving. But there are a huge majority of animations that just don't play out properly. They are janky. They don't connect with anything else that's happening. NPCs always feel like they are 1 moment away, 1 second away from wigging out and losing their chain of command and just doing whatever the fuck they want. There's a new sort of like takedown kind of idea, which is, I guess, meant to be kind of this Doom, glory kill inspired, push forward gameplay sort of idea where you work up to this finish and it's the only way to get back health. So you go up and you push triangle or Y and you do kind of a canned animated execution and get some health back. The amount of times the 2 bodies in that execution just aren't aligned, and so I'm stabbing the air or shooting the air or just kicking absolutely nothing. I've lost count of how many times that has happened. And so many, like you said, so many of those things are distractions. They scrub away at that layer of polish that you'd like every game to have. They scrub away at the reliability that you feel like you and the relationship you have with the game, to the point now where if I loaded up Saints Row on my PS5, I don't know if I go and do certain missions if I'm going to be able to finish that mission or not. I don't know if the mission's going to fail on me. I don't know if the loading screen's going to fail on me, because I've had to force quit that game 4 times in 6 hours, and at some point it's just like a weird balancing act of how long do you wait and how much time do you give it and how much breathing room do you give it and how much, how long's a piece of rope.
And a game has to be good enough to make you want to turn it back on again. It's never a good feeling when you kind of look at it and you go, oh, and then you look at like Netflix or you look at like Saints Row and you think, actually, there's some stuff on Netflix I'd like to watch. And I did that today. I was playing some Saints Row today, and I was like, do you know what? I'm halfway through an episode of Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, so I think I'll just turn Saints Row off for a bit and I'll just watch that. Yeah,
probably better, better use of your time. Your time's being more valued, if nothing else. And yeah, like but
there is something I like about it though. There is, like, I've enjoyed Saints Row games before, and there is an element to this that I do like. Like I'm kind of like, okay, I think I get where they're coming from. I think I get the direction they're going to go. I like how ludicrous the what is it? Ludo narrative dissonance.
Sure.
Whatever you said.
Yeah. Exactly.
Sure. I kind of feel like, I could see where they were going to go with it. Like they had this stupid idea that, we're going to take these 4 characters and we're going to say like, hey, look, in one half, they're a barista and a student and an army guy and a this and then and a mechanic. And then they do these insane things and the game's totally over the top and it just gets more and more ludicrous as the game goes on. Like I'm down for that. I just think the problem is with all of the issues and how underbaked it is and how badly served apparently by whatever issues that have gone on behind the scenes. I don't think it's going to be. I can't see how it's going to turn into that game for me.
No, me neither. And I'm a little bit further than you. Like I said, I'm not far enough where I can write off characters or story or writing in general. I need to see more of that to come to a conclusion on it. And those are the elements I was always going to give this game the most lenience. And if you go back to any time we talked about Saints Row over the past year or two, actually probably just a year, right? A year flat. Especially given the reaction to the reveal trailer and some of the miscommunication around the nature of the boss in this game and how, of course, you were still going to be able to customize your boss and make them whoever you wanted to be, but they went with a female boss in the trailer, blah, 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 go work, go broke, all that bullshit. I've always been the guy who said, I'm going to give them all the time they need. I was the guy who liked Watch Dogs 2, and whether it's Stockholm Syndrome or otherwise, I came around to liking those kind of, that band of misfit kind of weirdos. And even Wrench, the guy with the LED display on his head, I've got room, I've got leverage to dip into those kind of narratives. You know me, I like all the narrative-driven games about lesbians. I'm that guy.
You do?
Like, yeah.
You are that guy.
And so
you like everything.
I like everything. I'll give it. When it comes to video games, I will try and give everything the time of day. And I'm still in the process of giving some of Saints Row's narrative choices and character arcs and so on and so forth the time of day. But it's just how saddened I am by everything else around that I can make pretty good gut instincts on and gut checks on, like, from the rip that is kind of lessening my will to continue exploring those avenues and seeing where that stuff goes. And I will just say, like, every game needs to flesh out its its progression with a number of missions. They can't all be as large or as cinematic as each other, and it can't always hit the same highest highs. But I will say, like, anecdotally, in my 6 hours, the first 2 hours has far more high-level scripted cinematic missions than the subsequent 4 hours. In the early stages of the game, there are big kind of set-piece heavy missions, Mad Max Fury Road inspired convoy attacks and all this kind of stuff.
I just finished. I think I just finished that mission you're talking about.
But like a mission I just did last night was pick up a dude from the Saints HQ, drive to a place, shoot some people. We drove to another place, we shot some people, and on the drive back, the mission completed. And that could be used to describe. And I know I've criticised that kind of communication around games before, like that kind of intentionally diluting what a game is doing to just drive here, shoot that, because I know so many games are fundamentally made of those building blocks. And I'm not trying to be critical of Saints Row for falling into that formula, but it's when you notice that formula more than you do in other games, then it suggests that not everything is sort of coalescing in a way that's actually selling you on the entire package of everything that's going on. And I think that's because in the process of trying to warm to the characters, in the process of trying to understand where the narrative wants to go, I think the driving is fine. I actually quite like the drift mechanic for what it's worth. I think it's lenient enough and fluid enough that you can actually have some fun with it. I think the shooting is really rather rough, and I think is a step back from Saints Row 3 and Saints Row 4, which is not a particularly high compliment in the first place, because I don't think those games ever nailed their shooting. Like mission structure, mission design, especially around the open world and side stuff. I like the idea of having this sort of like criminal venture board and choosing the businesses you place down and where you place them down. But as soon as you realize that that's just the front for you choosing which set of side missions you unlock next and having them appear on the map, I think it then becomes this really like strange, almost like stop-starty way to, like, let's say you want to do insurance fraud, because that's just like a classic Saints Row side activity, and it's a fun way to make money and get respect or XP or whatever the case. And now it's like this thing of, well, I went to the Criminal Ventures board and I placed this fake hospital here, which opened up one case of insurance fraud over here, and I went and did that, and now I have to, and like you're going up these chains, and each time you're earning more, and it like nothing feels. I'm struggling to kind of put it to words, but
it's got the right good ideas, but then in the execution of it, it just feels bad. Just feels badly executed.
Yeah, that's
I think that's the game from the short amount I've played so far. I think that seems like the game all over. Like, and I think you made a really good point, which was that you can break games down into, and I like to. break games down into go here, shoot this person, go here, shoot this person. But I think the difference is in some games, the go here, shoot this person is the whole point because it feels so goddamn good. Like you could break down Hitman 3 and you could say Hitman 3 is sneak around, shoot person, sneak away. But the reason that game feels so good is because the way the sneaking and the shooting the person and the leaving the area feels so good that you enjoy it and it looks great. This, so I've just done the convoy mission that you were talking about through like a sandstorm where you're chasing a truck and you're like laying on top of cars, shooting at bikes, shooting at other cars, shooting people in turrets, and it just felt horrible because there was no skill involved. It's get the reticle kind of near bad guy, pull trigger, and it locks on, and then you just quickly hit the fire button multiple times and reload and do the same thing again. And that's no fun in that, especially in a game that you're already feeling a bit jaded by, from other things that mess up, like you were saying about technical issues, and I had technical issues with that level and stuff. So yeah, it's a real shame. I think I do think that it could be helped masses by updates, patches, hotfixes, etc. And I'm sure those are incoming. But I mean, yeah, if anyone asked me at the moment whether they should buy Saints Row, I would be like, you need to wait. Seriously, wait. It might never get there. Like, I have no idea what their after service sort of is gonna look like.
I mean, they haven't been communicating much thus far.
No,
there's already confusion about whether or not a day one patch has like been sent out to all platforms. Last time I checked, some people on Xbox seem to have a version. I think, I can't remember if it was 1.3 or 1.03 that doesn't seem to be present, or at least not nearly as present on PlayStation platforms. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Yeah.
Oh well, but there we go.
I will stick with it, and I will continue as ever to hope to be pleasantly surprised by some of the directions it takes things, by some of the missions later on, like I said, by narrative or character elements, or even just by a progression of some of the mechanics that aren't winning me over thus far, like the criminal ventures system, like fundamentals like the shooting. If there's a weapon that changes stuff like that, or if as I level up and get more abilities or more perks, if things change in a fundamental way, I'll continue to leave the door open for that. But again, the thing I can't escape when I think about Saints Row is how this was 9 years, not necessarily in the making, but as for us as players, 9 years of waiting for the future of a franchise that, as a big Saints Row fan, hadn't really let me down thus far. And the fact that they couldn't even release a buttoned-up version of an underwhelming Saints Row game is extremely disappointing to me.
I think also I find that and we're going to run on to talk about opening night live. And maybe this is unfair to put this on like one a game in particular, but when you play a game like this and you think back about the trailers and things that we've seen before, and you think about the marketing process now, I've been seeing Saints Row content for like the last year and getting hyped for it. In some cases, it makes me think about games that we're now seeing trailers for that we haven't played yet, gameplay of, and it just makes me worry about those, that hasn't come out yet. And I'm like, Jesus, is it going to be a Cyberpunk? Is it going to be a Saints Row? Is it like, how many times are we going to get stung by? I'm sure it's always been the same. I'm sure it has always been the same way with the games industry, but it does feel like games that shouldn't miss the mark this hard.
Yes.
It feels like it keeps happening on big titles these days, where you would just think they would get the basics right. And even in Saints Row, it seems like they can't even get the basics right, which is surprising.
It's surprising.
It's very surprising.
Especially because it's still Volition as well. Like, it was the same team. I don't know, man.
Yes, it's this the thing. If it was a different developer, at least you could maybe say, maybe it's a different publisher. So maybe you can say that there was actually the old mop thing of it's still the same mop, but actually how many of the elements of the mop have changed, and different publisher, different team members. Maybe that's got part to do with it.
Yeah.
But who knows? But hey, let's move on from Saints Row anyway, Jamie. What else have you been playing this week?
On a more positive note, I played a couple of smaller independent titles, if you will, that let's be upfront before we get over the top with any comparisons. I'm not trying to do anything near as big or as ambitious as something like a Saints Row. Neither of these two games that I've played are open world crime action games, for example, but they are both games that have honed in on what they want to be good at and are subsequently good at those things. One game I actually started playing before last week's episode, I just forgot to give it a shout out. It's just Rollerdrome, which I absolutely love. I just think it nails pretty much everything it's going for. Obviously positive vibes going into it. As a result of the fact that it's being developed by Roll7, who I thought smashed it with Ollie World earlier in the year. And the real, conversation in my head going into Rollerdrome was, can they handle that transition to the more 3D perspective, the sort of the Tony Hawk's aggressive inline inspired perspective, and can they also, get a system that feels complete and fair, and that has room to grow and to master, and kind of emulates that kind of classic Tony Hawk's feeling, while also letting me slow down time and shoot people in the head. And the answer to that is a resounding yes. And when you throw that in with a really cool art style and a thumping soundtrack, and really good sort of like pacing and measuring in terms of the difficulty curve and how it introduces new weapons and how it introduces new enemy types, it's just a really well-rounded game that also has a surprisingly interesting world and kind of meta-narrative layer. So certainly anyone that kind of looks at that and wants, likes the idea of a Tony Hawk's or aggressive inline style roller skating game. I don't think they're actually rollerblades. I think it's roller skating with shooting that kind of reminded me of sort of Sunset Overdrive in terms of how that handles the auto lock on stuff of like, hey, we want you to be able to grind and do tricks, but also you're going to be able to shoot people at the same time. It really nails that. And the other game that I want to give a shout out to that I played on Game Pass over the last couple of days that also absolutely nails what it's going for, even if it doesn't necessarily nail all the things it clearly cares less about, is Midnight Fight Express. I know I talked about it a couple of months ago, Jonesy, when the demo got released, and I will say my thoughts haven't changed that much since that demo. I still think the fundamentals of Midnight Fight Express, which is, the melee combat, and especially the way the melee combat develops as you flesh out that skill tree, are really well done. There is a really kind of meaty, crunchy feel to it all that reminds me of things like the Arkham games or Sifu, or it's in that kind of realm, but with a far more simplistic combat scheme, far more simplistic approach to combos, far more simplistic.
It's like an arcadey Sifu, isn't it? That's kind of what
exactly.
I felt.
Yeah, exactly. But it kind of nails what it's going for. The story is absolute nonsense. A lot of the dialogue is really bad. It's sort of this intentionally pulpy, schlocky B-movie nonsense about a sleeper agent who's awoken by a drone that arrives in a parcel one day and basically just goes out trying to rid a city of crime before crime takes over the city itself. But all you're really focused on during Midnight Fight Express is fucking people up. And it gives you a plethora of ways to do that, a plethora of weapons, both melee and ranged, to do it with. And just about all of that fucking up feels good. And I feel like that's sort of the fundamental of what a game like that is going for. So 2 thumbs up, says Rogery, but...
Nice. Yeah, no, I enjoyed the demo of Midnight Fight Express. I haven't actually played any since it came to Game Pass, but I think I had not long completed my friend Pedro, and I definitely felt like it was Sifu meets my friend Pedro is kind of what you get. That's an interesting way of putting it.
Yeah.
But no, very cool. I have played one other thing this week, which I'll touch on briefly, which it was Cult of the Lamb. I'm
jealous.
I thought I would pick this up. Because I was going away, and so I needed something to play on the plane, and sitting at the airport and stuff. So I picked this up. Do you know what's okay? I have a bit of a weird relationship with kind of like roguelites or dungeon crawlers, whatever you want to call them, because I often like enjoy them a lot and then fall off really hard. Because the elements that I think keep people going back time after time, like the just going through the dungeon again and again, and the loot cycle and trying to unlock new stuff and whatever, I don't know, it just doesn't stick that well with me. With Metroid Dread was one of the first times I've sort of played a game like that and actually thought and got to the end of it and had a good time with it. And, but maybe, it's not the same in the sense of it's not got forever changing level designs and things, but it has got more of that kind of Metroid-y feel to it. Cult of the Lamb was very weird, and I loved it. Like, I thought it was, it's super strange. I don't even know what genre it would fall into. I guess it is a.
From what I gather is what people are saying. It's sort of like a dungeon crawling roguelite that has, almost like a dumbed down like Hades. but then you come back and all of a sudden it becomes not quite like Stardew Valley, but like almost like an Animal Crossing.
It is
Animal Crossing.
It is like exactly. It is like Stardew Valley and Animal Crossing at the same time, which is a weird combination. So art style wise, your character and like, the characters that you meet, the people that you meet in the world who you can convert to your cult, are these like little cutesy animal drawings. They're like hedgehogs and reindeers and stuff. But when you meet them, they're like about to be sacrificed by other people, and then you kill the other people, rescue them, and then they're like, please don't kill me. And you're like, I won't kill you, I'm going to convert you. And then your eyes like roll back into your head, their eyes roll back into their head, and they disappear. And then you go back to your home base, like after you've finished, the dungeon or whatever that you're in. And when you go back, so I'll try to give you a rough breakdown, which this took me by surprise. I didn't realize this was how this game was going to go. So you die at the beginning of the game, but you're brought back by like this demon from below who wants to use you as his sort of supreme warrior to destroy the earthly beings who are keeping him hostage in the underrealm. Okay, and they've got him chained up and he can't escape. So yeah, he gives you new life. He gives you superpowers. He gives you something called the Red Crown, which is sort of imbues this dark power onto you, gives you the ability to unlock new moves, and that takes on a lot of your skills and things that you can unlock during the game. It then has the idea of like tarot cards thrown into it. So those are your unlockables that you can work to as you progress through the game. Through the dungeons, you'll get tarot cards, which will give you different powers. So it might give you an extra heart. It might give you double damage. It could do a whole range of stuff. Or it might give like you get down to 1 heart. Every hit you do is critical, or something like that. You then also have, as you'd expect, the powers that you can unlock, which are permanent, which I think they're the ones that are done sort of through the crown. But yes, sideline to the whole dungeon crawly, going through, destroying all of your enemies. You then have the little Stardew Valley base, like home, where you go back to, where your followers are mining stone, mining wood. You're building buildings, like you're building a temple, and you have to build like sleeping bags for them to sleep in. They've also got hunger and faith requirements that you've got to like serve, and you can give them little gifts so that one of them, like, he'll never sleep, so he never needs to sleep, so he'll just keep working all through the night and gets your resources together that you need to build. But it all comes together in a really nice way. And the way that it kind of works is you'll progress through a number of dungeons, and once you've defeated the dungeons, picking like routes, so you can sort of decide, I'm going to go this way and I'm going to recruit a new follower. I'm going to go this way and I'm going to unlock like loads of stone. And then you'll get to the end of the level and you'll sort of face a mini boss. And once you've fought like 4 mini bosses across a range of dungeons, you then get to fight one of the big bosses. And once you take out one of the big bosses, it goes on again and again and again until you kill all the big bosses, and then you release the Uber Demon. But it's just the way that all those elements come together, and that you get to grow your cult, which you can change the name of as well. I did call mine Cult of the Lamb because I thought that was fun. But cool, you can you can kind of push the cult in different directions, and you can grow it so that you have this horde of little woodland animals like supporting you, and you can sacrifice them as well to like give your followers more faith. You can declare doctrines in your cult, so you can say, oh, we're going to we have a doctrine of I don't even know, but it will give you certain power-ups and certain buffs to your cult, which obviously you don't lose if you die, etc. It's just a weird ass game, man, and with the art style and the combat and everything together, it's very cool. It's a lot of fun. Anyone who is into sort of those sorts of games at all, like roguelites at all, like I absolutely recommend it. Like Hollow Knight, I enjoyed for the combat. I thought was a lot of fun, but I did find it a little bit trying to sort of stick with. This I'm like, no, man, I want to support my little woodland creatures, and I want to get us to be the Uber cult, and kill when that demon dude comes out at the end, because it's obviously going to happen that we're going to have to fight him and take over as the leader. I'm up for it, man. Our cult is taking over the world. It's Cult of Lamb all the way. Fuck that demon dude.
Nice. I'm a little bit scared, but I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah, it's. I like the juxtaposition of the weird mishmash of styles is cool.
Just promise me you won't get any ideas that you can relate now into your real life from this game.
Oh, I'm learning, man. I'm picking up some of those sermons and some of the little declarations you can do. I'm going to create my own little cult.
Cult of the Jones. Oh God.
Exactly.
If I see Chris's eyes roll into the back of his head just once from this point on, I'm taking you down.
Yeah, but you won't be able to. There'll be two of us.
I'm strong on them both. I could fight you and Chris at the same time and win.
Nah.
I could fight you and Chris at the same time and win with one hand tied behind my back.
I mean, I'm just going to keep saying maybe because I want to see it happen. It would be hilarious.
With cult overtones or just for fun?
Sorry?
With cult overtones or just for fun?
Cult overtones and just for fun.
Okay, yes. You haven't asked me my tactic.
Your tactic?
Yeah.
What is your tactic?
I just get both of you to lose your glasses. I just try and maneuver it in such a way that the glasses fall off both of your faces and I'll stamp on them.
And then we'll fight each other.
Yeah, exactly. Then I just walk away.
We won't realise who's who.
Yeah, exactly. Life hacks.
Life hacks. If you fight someone with glasses, just knock the glasses off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Well, there you go. That is what we've been playing this week. Hey, I guess the idea from that you can take don't play Saints Row. Play Cult of Lamb.
Don't play Saints Row yet. Maybe play Saints Row in the future if it ends up being the kind of thing that you want to play.
Exactly. All right. I was going to call you Chris then. Jamie.
Wow, what a compliment.
I've got a comment of the week. Would you like to hear it?
I would.
This comes in from Sean Cass, who says, if there was a SuperShow game and all three of you were different classes in that game, what would they be or what qualities would they have? Personally, I could see Jamie as a tank with a special ability where he gets more powerful the more damage he takes. Jonesy would be a mage with a special ability that occasionally one of his spells would have a random modifier applied to it. And Chris could be a bard and his special ability is to either speed up time or slow it down.
This is a fun idea.
We should maybe ask this again when Chris is back, because then I'd like to know.
No, this is funner because then we get to answer for him and we get to come up with all kinds of. Plus, the other thing that I'm thinking of as I'm reading this comment, or rather hearing you read it, is that we have already done some kind of D&D style content that has been committed to film, so to speak, and Chris has already, even though he's not with us here today, he's already aligned himself on a certain trajectory through that content, which is to say, I think was he a bard?
No, I was the bard.
You were a bard. Why do I think of Chris as being bard-like, at least in that he
was the
D&D
mage,
section?
wasn't he? Just because he was a nutter. He was leaping around, pissing on stuff.
That's what I was going to say, is that I think no matter what, his actual special abilities or modifiers are, that it has to involve pissing on people and slitting the throats of undeserving onlookers.
I think that Sean's nailed you. I think you would be a tank.
Yeah, I think I kind of have to be a tank.
What would your power? Well, I don't agree though that your power would be the more that you get. Well, actually, similar. I go similar. The more powerful you get, more powerful the more damage you take. I'm going to go in that you don't get more powerful the more damage you take, but when you reach critical damage, right, you go into rage mode. Just red goes over and you just destroy the room and everything.
Okay. I can see that, yeah. That kind of, I guess that taps into my persona as a slightly more argumentative individual, which I personally don't think I am, and I don't think I live up to it either, but it's what people want to think. I'm not going to change their minds. That's what they think. That's fine.
I know, see, I think it's more like you're a very nice, lovable guy, but I imagine if you poke the bear too many times with the stick, the bear's going to wake up.
There's a reason that's the expression, poking the bear. Like, bears are nice, big, lovable, cuddly things, but if you poke the bear... Not. Yes, they are, Jonesy. I just watched Prey the other day, and I can tell you that bears are nice, big, cuddly things, and they're just out here to make friends. It's when you look at them funny that the problems start to come. Or if you try and stab them with claws that protrude from your wrist or anything like that.
Like that.
No, they don't
like it up them, as that guy says from Dad's Army.
They don't like it up them. Yes, in more ways than one.
Yeah. I wouldn't be a mage. I'm not a fan of the mage class.
I was going to say, I'm torn on this because being a mage does sort of tap into, there's something about you that's a little bit more astute and a little bit more worldly and well-read and I know that doesn't always probably
play out ever.
Yeah, play out, certainly on the podcast, but there is something about you, I don't know. You're world weary, and you have an awareness that I associate with a mage. And I could see you wearing a long cloak or some kind of garb like that. The thing is, you've also got some
cloak.
Yeah, and I could see you wearing a proper head to toe kind of number with a hood of some nature and really long sleeves, the whole thing. The thing is, you do have some rogue-ish qualities about you, where I could also see you in a combat scenario being quite slippery, like maybe climbing a tree or having a knife. I'm not saying you're the kind of person like that's fully cloak and daggers and slits people's throats, a la Chris, but there is you kind of like straddle the line between the two. Which do you associate with more? Or neither?
Tricky. It's tricky.
Because you could also be like a barbarian if you wanted to.
It's tough. Usually when I play games, you can choose like type. I'm usually go for like a berserker or like a soldier or something like that. Not quite tank, but one removed, where you get close to the action, but maybe not like right into it. But I like the idea of the cape. Yeah,
you could be a mage. Well,
I could be a mage. I could be a mage who likes to get stuck in. That wouldn't be too bad.
Also, if we were to kind of fill out the Holy Trinity, we would need a tank, a healer, and a damage dealer. And it sounds like I might have to be the tank. So what if you were, had some healing qualities about you, and we allowed Chris to piss on people? And
do you know what? I do enjoy that. I do enjoy playing the old healer role sometimes. I like being that support character. So yeah, that could work quite well. A mage with some healing abilities. I like it.
Yeah,
and then
that with the capacity to be offensive when needed.
Yes, of course. You have to be able to be offensive, even if you don't use it that often.
Yeah.
But then, come on then. What would Chris be?
I mean, as a class, in terms of like...
See, you described rogue, and I was like, oh my God, that's Chris. Like climbing up a tree with a dagger, stabbing people in their sleep. I'm like, yeah, that's Chris right there.
Yeah, but there's also...
pissing on them. He'd stab them in their sleep, he'd steal their money, and he'd piss on them.
The thing is, like, there's elements of Chris's personality that are sort of like they're butting heads against each other in my head, which is that when we play out the kind of the fictional, fantastical scenario that we're talking about, Chris does divulge in some of those less desirable traits, like a desire or a willingness to piss on members of the public. But in reality, like if this was some real life, real world shit, Chris is extremely sensible. Like Chris is Chris has the capacity to be like the wise one amongst us, like the one who's like, let's break this down and be adults about this.
He has, that's true.
So I guess it depends whether we're indulging more in the fantastical side of things or the more sort of like practical reality side of things.
Oh, can we not pull both together? Can he not be? Is there not?
He's like a Jekyll and Hyde style rogue. Yes. So like sometimes he's extremely kind of like sensible, and he's a communicator and he can talk his way out of trouble, and at other times he's windmilling his penis on top of a building. And
can he not be like a wizard crossed with a rogue? I don't know, and then he could almost be like the wise wizard, but then at the same time he can be a little imp running around in the night. I like the idea that it's at night that he switches. Like in the day he's like a he's like a wizard with a staff. Like
he's like the outcast from the wizard family. He's Gandalf the Green. He didn't quite make the cut. He's just too much of a wild card. Yeah. He's got all the formal training, and he is technically acknowledged as a wizard, but he is also on the sex offenders register.
I think that's him. I think that's Chris.
Lovely. We nailed it. Chris, write a comment in the comment section down below, letting us know what you think of that.
Also, let us know in the comments down below if you agree with Sean, if you think those are the classes that we would have, or if you agree with Jamie and I, are those the classes we would have, or what do you think we would be? That would be fun. There we go. Let's see what people say. Okay, let's get on to the meaty part of the podcast, because if you didn't know, a few days ago it was opening night live, coming from GamesCom was it Munich? I can't even remember.
Cologne. Come on, Jonesy.
Cologne.
We've been there. You and I.
No, I know. I've also been to Munich, and I've been to Hamburg, and I've been to Cologne. I was trying to remember which one.
La-di-da. Look at me, Mr. Just call me Mr. Germany.
Mr. Germany. Yeah, please don't call me that. And Geoff kicked it off. It was a good show. I thought it was pretty decent. We saw a lot of games that we've seen before, which was to be expected, but there were also some new trailers. There was some new footage from games we'd already known about. There were some unfortunate leaks before the show, so we knew things that were going to pop up, and they did. I'm sure we'll talk about it, but Jamie and I were both saying at the time that Geoff was probably fuming that some of his little secrets got out.
It's like, without kind of like jumping too far ahead into the conversation, a leak is a bummer regardless of how and when it happens. But within the context of a show like this, or a showcase like this coming up, you always worry about, or at least wonder, how was this planning on fitting into the show and how big a deal was this? I'm always reminded of when Assassin's Creed Odyssey leaked before Ubisoft's press conference in 2018. I think it was like a weird like toy helmet or something like that. Basically, it leaked and the secret was out, and you were like, God, I really hope this wasn't their one more thing kind of big reveal at the end, and it totally was.
Yes, and you called it this time as well. Jamie said, I hope that's not the one more thing. And that was about 20 minutes before it was. And it was. But we will get onto that later. We're not going to do the same thing that the leakers did and spoil it for you, just in case you haven't heard yet what the one more thing is. So, it'd be a nice little treat at the end of the opening night live wrap up. Okay, so I'm quickly going to go through some of the games that we have already talked about multiple times before, because we only got to see a little bit more game footage, a little bit more cinematics from them. So we're not going to linger too long. So we got new trailers for the Callisto Protocol, which showed some more gameplay, some cool shots of you sliding down a slide and more dying, which that game seems like it's going to do to you a lot. Some more Hogwarts Legacy footage from the game. I think this time, if I remember rightly, it was leaning toward a bit of story stuff and about how you can use those evil Cruciatus curses to do away with your enemies. But obviously, a little bit of a sore spot because we should be playing Hogwarts Legacy not too soon, and unfortunately, we're not going to because it's been pushed. But whatever. I'm not bitter. Can you tell me?
No, not at all. Clearly not.
Sonic Frontiers popped up with a new trailer as well, which was, do you know what, this hurt me a little bit because when they announced the trailer and said Sonic Frontiers, the crowd noticeably just like, hey, because obviously it's been a bit lackluster in the response to what we've seen already for that. We then got to see another trailer for Goat Simulator 3, Return to Monkey Island, Genshin Impact, and Warhammer 40,000 Dark Tide, which looks wicked, and I still can't wait to play, which is also coming to Game Pass. So I'm going to play that the day it comes out because I'm sick. But, Jamie, let's get a little bit more into a few of the trailers that we saw that we hadn't seen before, or just ones we want to talk about. And the first one is Everywhere, which comes from Leslie Benzies' new company called...
Build a Rocket Boy.
Build a Rocket Boy. Thank you. I completely forgot. This is something that's been talked about for a while. Like, we've known the name of the game for a while, but we haven't actually seen anything. And I thought it was pretty tasty looking. What did you think?
It's certainly interesting, right? Like when Leslie Benzies has a very big, very public falling out with Rockstar, and all of a sudden one of the key figures behind the successes of, say, the Grand Theft Auto franchise goes on to make something else and confirms it's a big open world style project and calls it Everywhere. It's very hard not to let your mind wander and race away with all kinds of things that could be and that could mean. I'll be honest, I didn't really expect it to be this, which for anyone that hasn't seen it, it showed of a range of different environments and a range of different activities happening in those environments, from platforming sections to third-person shooting sections to racing sections, all with an art style that was a little bit reminiscent of, say, Fortnite, but with maybe a slightly different edge to it. Not quite as sort of like cartoony, and of course it doesn't have any of the licenses or IPs that kind of colour Fortnite nowadays. But it was still that feeling of, they're making an open-ended game that looks like anything could play out in it. And the vibe I got before they kind of turned it on its head a little bit at the very end of the trailer, the vibe I got was they're making a Fortnite-y, Roblox-y, metaverse-y kind of thing that is like Fortnite without the Battle Royale. Like, hey, fundamentally, here's a thing that you can download that has, a game within it that has shooting mechanics and driving mechanics, all these characters and a world and all these different environments, and you can create things that happen within it, but also here are all these other wild experiences. And like I said just then, they teased something at the end of the trailer that appeared to be a very cinematic departure from everything else we'd seen thus far, with a dude who I'm pretty sure it looks identical to the protagonist from Mafia 3. And I haven't seen anyone else talking about that, and I don't know why. I don't know if I'm just going crazy or if it's like just the same dude has lent his likeness to both games. But yeah, it kind of, the trailer twists at the end, didn't it? And kind of had this very cinematic, completely different art style, which kind of gave the impression
like
of
photorealistic versus
exactly
sort of much more stylized, cartoony look, like you were saying with the Fortnite style.
Yeah,
and immediately, I think when we were talking about it at the time, it made me think of like Ready Player One. It gave me that vibe. Like, are they creating, or are they trying to create like a hub world in which, like you were saying, that you can do like almost like anything else inside that world, and how that's actually going to play out, because it's supposed to be coming out at some point in 2023, which isn't that long away. I mean, they must have been working on this for a couple of years at this point. So I suppose, that doesn't seem that crazy. But there are some things that have raised a few eyebrows, like the inclusion of NFTs in crypto, and because there have been some job postings relating to that specifically. But Build a Rocket Boy have said that those things are merely research positions, and that's not to suggest that the game is going to be trying to sap all of your money out of you more metaverse style, as you might expect. But I mean, it's hard to imagine that it won't, in some respects, have paywalls to unlock certain new content, especially if it's a all-encompassing world. You could absolutely imagine how it's like, pay a bit more for the DLC to unlock the racetrack section, pay a bit more for the DLC to unlock this section.
Yeah, there'll be cosmetics, galore.
I don't even think it's cosmetics. I think if they're making a game called Everywhere, I can imagine that at some point there's a new...
Nah.
Oh, well, maybe not. Maybe not. I was going to say there's
But you don't, in 2022, 2023, you don't paywall content.
No, I'm thinking content comes out in 2025 for as DLC, where they say, "Oh, we've created a new module which allows you to go and do downhill skiing." I don't. Well, maybe.
Think
not.
about Roblox. Think about Fortnite. Think about GTA Online, which has been around for 9 years now.
Fair.
The content is never the thing that's paywalled. The content is the thing that gets people back in who have fallen off. It's
Roblox is paywalled.
To be fair, I've never played with
Roblox is like games within a thing that you have to pay for. So
okay, I could the vibe I was getting from this is like, this is a thing that you can download, that when you go in, you have some like your own character, and you can go between these different environments, and there would be like a racing mode over here, and a team deathmatch thing over here, and a battle royale thing over here, a la Fortnite. But there's also a weird thing where like, a game within Everywhere just dropped. Like, let's say the game, like, the Jonesy Trials just dropped, and within Everywhere, you and maybe your friends go over and play the Jonesy Trials, either on your own or as a group, and the Jonesy Trials can be something completely different. In the same way that, like, Fortnite has experimented with, now you're at an Ariana Grande concert, and now you're watching the Tenet trailer, or whatever the Christopher Nolan thing was, where they just watched a movie in Fortnite.
Yes.
Like, I think they want that.
So I love the sound of that. I really do like the sound of that. But it's one of these things whereby it almost takes me back to Star Citizen and games like that, where are they promising too much? And it makes me think that is such a big ask. How is it going to look anything like reality? I mean, we can't mention this without talking about the is it Meta Worlds that Mark Zuckerberg sort of posted some pictures from this week, and it was supposed to be one of the first ways to get into like the metaverse, and it just looked like trash. Someone even mocked up a thing which was like Sim Baby or something like that, Sim Baby's Big World or something, and said it's like a game from like 2005 because it just looks so shit. Hopefully Leslie Benzies.
Oh, sorry,
go on. I'd say hopefully Leslie Benzies won't have the same problem, and it actually looks pretty decent. And it does look pretty decent.
It's interesting, if nothing else. When he popped up and I saw the name tag come on screen, I was like, oh shit, okay, this is actually like a very intriguing way to open a show like this, and I want to see more of what this is. Because Leslie Benzies is an interesting character.
He is, and not too long to wait if it's 2023, so it's not too long at all. So Dune Awakening, which was hinted at by the Snitch not too long ago, was shown off, which is an open world survival MMO in the works. I am not that big into like the Dune world in general. Is that something? Have you seen the film? Have you read the books?
A note about, I haven't seen either film. I have not read the books. So I've got to acknowledge that I am neither a Dune guy nor, traditionally speaking, an open world survival MMO guy. So this doesn't really do much for me on either front. But I gather that it is still, a kind of...
It's massive. As an IP, it's huge.
Dune's massive, and MMOs are big, as it turns out.
Yeah. It looks like a cool world as well. I like the idea of like giant sandworms and, sci-fi and capes and blah, 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 blah. It does sound cool.
Totally.
But it's one of those where I think we're going to have to just wait and see what the actual game itself looks like, because it could look like something amazing. It could look like something,
I'll tell you,
really that bothered
if Sting comes back for this one, I'll play it.
I want to see the new film. I didn't see the original, but I do want to see the new one just because I've heard people say it was really good. But wasn't it super long? as well? Like,
I think it's one of those things where not only is it quite long, but I think also it's half of the story.
oh right,
And the second film is I can't remember if it's filming or if it's got the green light to start filming or kind of where it's at. But I've got a feeling I wouldn't be surprised if there were opportunities to see what will soon be referred to as the first part of June on the big screen again. As the second part is about to come out, which maybe that makes for a nice sort of double bill if it's not too long. That might end up being like 5 hours, 6 hours of film, but you know.
It would have been good had Cineworld not potentially be going bankrupt before it comes out. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens with that. We also got to see the Sony new DualSense Edge controller, which we'd heard about. I don't know if it was leaks or whether it was just them releasing information, but the Sony Pro controller, I think it was called when it was leaked. But yeah, the DualSense Edge has got a lot of customizable features. It allows you to change the resistance of the trigger buttons. You can change the joysticks and things, which is very nice to hear because I've had a bit of problem with drift on my PlayStation 5 controllers at some point. So that's a nice little thing to be able to have. It was a bit of a lackluster thing to put into Game Open Night Live, I thought, at Gamescom. But
yeah, I mean, PlayStation aren't at Gamescom officially, so I wonder if that was just their little kind of we'll throw Geoff a bone.
Yeah, because Geoff literally said, "Oh, we've got some exciting announcement from Sony," and it's like, this is not an exciting announcement. This is kind of like a controller.
I thought it was a good get. Like, I don't think Sony has ever officially done their own version of what Xbox have done with the Elite controller. I remember on the PS4 they allowed certain other companies, I think like third-party companies, to make essentially licensed versions of pro controllers or would-be pro controllers, but this is the first time they've done it themselves, and to do it so early on in the life cycle of the DualSense, I'm definitely down for this. I want some back paddle action in my life. I'm going to be a pro Fortnite player, just you watch.
Oh yeah, okay. I'll keep my eyes open for that.
Take that back. I'm going to be a pro everywhere player. That's the big new moneymaker.
Oh, pro everywhere, yeah. Well, can you even be pro in everywhere? We don't even know what it is yet. It's too everywhere. We have no idea.
You're right.
Hexworks Studios showed off some Lords of the Fallen, which is the sequel to Lords of the Fallen, but they've now dropped the 2, so now it's Lords of the Fallen.
And you really need to pronounce the Lords of the Fallen. Otherwise, it is literally the exact same name.
The Lords of the Fallen is now the sequel to Lords of the Fallen, but it's no longer called Lords of the Fallen 2, so it's called Lords of the Fallen.
It's the dumbest shit imaginable, but whatever, yeah.
I think they get away with that. Like, so many people these days do stupid things with naming. And they just call it the same thing. Saints Row is just called Saints Row.
Yeah, but come on, that was a reboot that came out 9 years after the last game. Fair enough. This is just them making a sequel saying, actually, we don't want to put it to... We're worried that the original game has so little cachet and so little, holds so little place in the knowledge and the memory of gamers that we're just going to drop the 2 because we were thinking about actually put them off and call it The Lords of the Fallen. Which, they're probably right, but there you go.
I don't remember much about this game. It was very rocky, had a lot of music in it, which was nice, but I don't know. Apart from that, I don't really know anything about it.
Lords of the Fallen, so Hexworks Studios didn't make the original Lords of the Fallen. That was made by Deck 13, who will come up again later. Deck 13 made Lords of the Fallen and then went on to make The Surge and The Surge 2. Hexworks Studios have taken over development of this sequel, so expect it to be a Soulsborne-inspired game as the original was, although if this trailer's anything to go by, I'd imagine there's going to be a little bit, more than a little bit of Elden Ring-style flavouring scattered on top, but we'll see.
And then... Oh, I've lost where I was. Team 17 are now publishing Moving Out 2, which is due out in 2023. We then got a new little taste of new Tales from the Borderlands, which is actually being made by Gearbox, I believe. It's not being made by Telltale because obviously Telltale made Tales from the Borderlands. Which I'd say, is this going to be a full-on Tales from the Borderlands like narrative game? Do you know? I
believe it's just a honest-to-goodness attempt to make another Tales from the Borderlands. I don't think it's a sequel. I don't think there are any characters that are crossing over. I'd imagine there's characters from the wider Borderlands universe, but yeah, as you said, this is Gearbox kind of taking over from Telltale and probably fucking it up.
Maybe. Well, Randy was there to introduce it at least, so that must mean that they're into it. They like it, and it's coming out in October, so we don't have to wait long at all.
That's just a clause that Gearbox put into everything, is that you can only announce our games if Randy gets some stage time.
That's the only reason they're making it, is so that Randy can go be at Gamescom.
It was even worse when they were doing Borderlands 3. Then you could only get the Borderlands 3 announcement if you let Randy on stage and you let him do a magic trick. Luckily, they took that second clause out for new Tales of the Borderlands, but who knows?
He's used his one magic trick.
Yes, exactly.
So he didn't have any more to show.
His one magic trick is that Gearbox is still in business. That's harsh. That's harsh.
That's mean.
Yeah.
They're doing all right. They're doing fine. Someone else who's still in business is Techland, and they were at Gamescom to show off Bloody Ties, which is the Dying Light 2 DLC, which is comgoing out in October. Not a bad game, but I still haven't finished it yet. I need to get back into that.
And just,
too many things to play.
Talking about how we're going to have to keep an eye on what Volition do with Saints Row. I will just say that Techland continue to do an exceedingly above average job of patching Dying Light 2, not just to kind of soften some technical rough edges and so on and so forth, but they've now got to the point where they're doing what they're calling, I think, community updates, which they're basically just taking everything the community say they want and putting that in the game, including now, apparently there was a subsection of Dying Light 2 fans who really wanted that game to look like more what it looked like in E3 2019, where apparently it had a slightly grungier, kind of grittier art style. So they've just put that in the game now, where there's an option where you can toggle like a gritty mode that makes it look more like it did in 2019. So there you go.
Gritty. Oh, interesting. I won't be turning that on. So there you go.
That's harsh. Not even with Bloody Ties, the new DLC.
I don't know why I'd want it to look more gritty. It was plenty gritty from what I've seen so far. It's a dirty post-apocalyptic, post-zombie world. But
people are weird, Jonesy.
There we go. There's a new pirate game coming, a tactical pirate game called Tortuga. I've only ever heard of Tortuga because if you watch Pirates of the Caribbean, that's a place they go to. So yeah, Tortuga. Team 17 were back to show off Marauders, a Tarkov-looking first-person shooter, and then we get on to Bungie, who showed off Lightfall,
which is the new Destiny expansion.
I am so far behind with the Destiny expansions, I must admit.
Okay.
I have no idea where I'm at, where they're at, where we're at, what's been going on.
Well,
come on, Jamie, help me out.
Well, okay, there was an entire stream devoted to everything that Destiny 2 has got going on, so I think people should go and watch that to get fully up to speed. But the bottom line that I can give you is that Destiny 2 seems to be doing very well. It keeps adding millions of players. The current season, or the upcoming season, I don't even know if it started, is called the Season of Plunder. I think everything seems to be going smoothly. There are Destiny skins in like Fortnite and Fall Guys right now, which is kind of crazy. I didn't think either of those crossovers would ever happen. Destiny 2 is also now on the Epic Game Store. And I think I'm right in saying if you go and pick it up on the Epic Game Store, like loads of the expansions and loads of the content are free. So if anyone just wants to jump in, like right now, having not played the game for a couple of years, Epic Game Store might actually be a good cost-effective way of doing that, because I'm not sure if that shit is free anywhere else. And yes, Lightfall, which you mentioned, is the new expansion, new paid expansion. So they're still doing a thing where every year there's a new big hit of paid shit with a new campaign and a bunch of other changes and a new yearly update, and then they do seasons to support it after that. And it's actually kind of interesting because it's set in like how most of Destiny is like desolate and it's been destroyed and laid waste to time and everything's kind of like crumbling and falling in on itself.
Yeah,
they were like, what if there was a city that for some reason just wasn't? And so it's called like, I can't remember what the name of the city is or which planet it's on, but it's like, it was a city that actually like never got damaged and never collapsed in itself and just continued thriving and expanding and growing and advancing because it was hidden. And so you look at it and it's like some like really cool, like futuristic, neon-y, almost like future 80s style city in a way that like I don't think we've ever seen an environment like that in Destiny before. That's really interesting. There's a new kind of, I forget what the name of I don't think it's just class, not a new class, a new kind of the powers that the classes can use to infuse their abilities. I think there's a new one of those. I think it's called Strand or something like that. Bottom line is it's green and you can use it as like a grappling hook, but rather than grappling to like certain points and like it can grapple to any point in space and time because you're literally fucking with the strands of space and time. So it just like pulls like you like attach to like thin air and pull yourself forward. It's kind of cool the way the effect pays off. And yeah, there's a bunch of other big updates coming for next year. I think it's like the year 6 update, which are designed to help new players. So there's going to be a new and kind of far more thorough looking for a group style kind of mechanic in the game where it can match you with other players depending on kind of what kind of fits your needs for your party and your fire team and what kind of content you're looking to do. And they're also looking to dramatically streamline and restructure the way in which people, the route in which people are given a sort of a path forward in Destiny. So if you just jumped in blind and you were faced with all this content, you didn't know what to do and what to prioritize, they're trying to find ways of like, how can we create like checklists and a structure around that so people always feel like they have something to do and they know what they've got to do next and they know what the logical next step is. So just
that is me with Destiny 2. It was like play the campaign, finish the campaign. That was good. What do you do now? I don't know. I guess I'll go play something else. Whereas they're like, obviously, it's like, no, come play these 1,000 other downloadable contents, like these raids.
Exactly.
And I just never got on with any of that stuff and just never jumped into any of it.
It seems like that's what they're trying to work around. Now that millions more people a year are trying Destiny, and it is still free, it seems like they really want people to not just jump on and play a campaign, but also be like, here's what I'm going to do when I play this game every day for like the next 5 years.
Yes. Which is great. That's what I want to hear because I'm definitely one of those dumbasses who just kind of just look at, there's almost like stifled by how much content there is around some games, especially when they're a service and you kind of say, okay, where did I jump? Where did I leave off? And then you try and get back into it after like a year or 18 months or something like that. And it's almost unrecognizable. And you think, wow, this has gone far. You know, and everyone in the game seems to know exactly what's going on, exactly what they're doing. And you just go, maybe I'll just go play something else. Maybe I'll go play Cult of WoW.
We need to create like a group of people, a group of people who will collectively agree that they don't know anything about the game they want to play, and then they all start playing at the same time. It's like a self-help group for beginners.
Yeah, self-help group for gamers to all get into the game and play together. I tell you what you could do, instead of playing that though, you could play Under the Waves, which is a game developed by Parallel Studio, published by Quantic Dream, which kind of looked a bit eerie, a bit. It reminded me a little bit of what was the trailers that we saw for Death Stranding, where it was like the whales and stuff underwater and everything going weird, crossed with maybe a bit of Alan Wake, like that sort of spooky, darkness going on. But it looked interesting. We didn't really see much. It was just a bit of a cinematic trailer. But hey, that looks interesting. Something else, Jamie, that looked pretty interesting was Moonbreaker.
Yeah, not my cup of tea, but it definitely looks interesting. They've gone, so it's I think they're calling it a digital miniatures game. And yeah, that seems accurate because the one thing that struck me when I was watching it was Warhammer. Like, what if you were playing a tactical game where actual physical statuettes were present on the grid? And what if they went one step further and you could actually paint them yourselves, which is, I think, a really nice touch. And if you're going to go digital miniatures, then why not go the whole hog, right?
Do you know what's funny? Like I remember painting miniatures when I was a kid, like, painting some of them. And then I sort of did a few more when I was a bit older because I played a bit of Zombicide and like painted some of those. But this is from the developers of Subnautica. Obviously, it's a completely different style of game. They've gone in a completely different direction. They've worked with an author called Brandon Sanderson, who's, I recognize some of the books that he's written or he's worked on. I haven't read any of them, but my wife's big into like fantasy stuff, and I know she's read some of them. But yeah, this was sort of an interesting. It's supposed to be a cross between what was the name of the game? Hearthstone and XCOM is what they said. It's like a weird, like turn-based tactical sort of battle chess looking thing where the statues themselves, the miniatures don't move, but you can move them around the board. But then there are animations around that. So there are explosions and things fall over and people get, things thrown at them and all sorts of stuff happens. I thought it looked like a really cool concept for a game. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people out there who really get into it. I'm not sure how the staying power will fare and what the actual longevity of the game, what it will have. But hey, We will see.
Yeah.
It was kind of, yeah. It was kind of one of those. It's one that I so want to play. I so want to get and play, and then I know I'll put it down after 2 hours and be like, I'm never playing that again.
Yeah, like, and don't get me wrong, I like elements of both Hearthstone and XCOM, but I'm also just I'm not being negative about Moonbreaker whatsoever. It's just one of those things where I kind of look at all the disparate elements that have come together to make something like that, and I'm like, this probably isn't the kind of thing that I go in for. It's the kind of thing I might try in a free-to-play capacity, but it's not quite my genre enough to like just dive in blind.
It's a perfect Game Pass game.
You never know. You never know.
Friends versus Friends was another one of these build your deck first-person shooter. Build your card deck with your different things, attributes, buffs, whatever you want to use. I can't even remember what they're called.
Cards.
And then you can use your abilities. There you go. Use your abilities to fight your friends. Like a multiplayer first-person shooter, which looked fine. It really reminded me of what was the other one that recently came out that was just the cards and you didn't even have guns?
Oh, Neon White.
Neon White. Thank you. I put the cards away, game developers. It's too literal. It's too literal.
I think Neon White's way of going about it was actually kind of cool. The more I looked at that game and the more gameplay I watched, the more I was like, actually, I kind of respect what Neon White is doing with, because it's not a deck builder. At least they just
went for it.
Yeah.
At least they both feet jumped in. I don't understand why games like Friends versus Friends need to like keep one foot out and go, okay, well, you've still got a gun and everything, but look, you've got your deck of cards with all your abilities on at the side. I'm like, then just put the cards away.
But nerds like cards. Ever since Magic the Gathering, Chris could vouch for that if he was here. Nerds like cards.
Though. It's different nerds.
Card
not all
nerds
are created equal.
So not all nerds like cards, but all card games are for nerds.
Okay, especially now they keep putting them into bloody video games. So
yeah, we don't have no choice. It's death by cards at this rate. I can't wait till Rockstar reveal more about GTA 6 and it's got massive deck building elements.
Oh, don't. I'm not touching it. I'm steering clear of any games with cards. Then, after Friends versus Friends, we actually got to see a game which I predict is going to be Chris's Game of the Year 2023,
Ooh.
which is Lies of P, which is a Soulsborne game where you play as Pinocchio trying to become a real boy and having to fight big, nasty people and bosses and stuff that are trying to stop you, realizing your dream. But he did have a cool-ass robot hand, which, I mean, I don't know where Pinocchio's getting his robot hand from, that seemed to give him different abilities like super strength. And, he was cracking safes open. He was like zip lining and beating the shit out of people with it. And he was firing shotguns and weapons and all sorts as well. So this actually looks pretty cool. It's a very strange use of the IP.
But I totally dig it. Like, yeah,
in a way, I know what you mean.
There's something about this idea, the idea of like a hardcore Soulsborne, like bizarre interpretation of a classic tale like Pinocchio that I am all here for. Like that's the right kind of weird for me. And in fact, the only thing I can say about this game that's remotely negative is actually a sentiment that I shared with you at the time when we were watching Opening Night Live, which is that it's depressing watching gameplay of a game that looks so cool, but you immediately know that you're going to be arse at it. And I'm going to be tragically bad at Lies of P. But it still looks really, really cool. And also, just it's quite a nice fit. Like when you think about the idea behind Pinocchio and how it's got these inherent sort of like mechanical, almost clockworky, steampunky potentially elements, that I can see how you can expand on the either explicit or just the hinted at world around a character like Pinocchio, and extrapolate from that into a whole game's worth of ideas and content. And then when you get like interesting representations of like, this is Geppetto in this game, this is Jiminy Cricket in this game, I'm like, this is kind of gnarly.
Did you catch Jiminy? So when he has
he's
the
in a
lamp
lantern
on his side, lantern, thank you, and it's all lit up, and I was like, there's Jiminy Cricket.
Yeah, exactly.
Chatting away.
You hear him talking, you get a little bit of Jiminy dialogue.
You do.
Yeah, what a funky idea, and I know we just talked about it with regards to Moonbreaker, but this one is day one Game Pass, so it's going to be like a completely, risk-free, no barrier to entry, give it a go and see what you think kind of, and hell yeah, let's do it.
Guaranteed there is a cut scene in this where you're about to die and this massive boss also is holding you like this, and he's going like, "What do you say, Pinocchio, before you die?" And then he says something like, "I'm not afraid of you." And then his nose just shoots off and goes straight through the guy's eye and like goes through the back of his head.
Nice.
And kills him.
Smart. Also, and just then when you were like relaying that story, and I was thinking about the real Pinocchio, or at least the film Pinocchio, the animated cartoon, and where that goes. Doesn't Pinocchio... I get some of this stuff mixed up with Dumbo, but doesn't Pinocchio get really fucked up at the end? Where like they're turning boys into goats or something like that? Like they're like stealing boys and people are turning into goats and they're all screaming. I get it mixed up because Dumbo is like Dumbo gets drunk and goes on a weird hallucinatory trip, and it's all like the weird bubbly pink elephants and stuff like that. But Pinocchio, I think, is the one where like his mate is a regular boy and he gets like turned into a goat or something. It gets kind of fucked up.
It's been too long since I've seen it. I've got no idea.
Me
Probably
too.
I've seen it since I was like 5 years old or something.
I've got good news for you, Jonesy, because as well as getting a video game based on Pinocchio, there are about like 3, 4, 7 different films based on Pinocchio, all coming out in the space of like the next 2 years.
That's so weird. Why? That's odd the way that happens. But yeah, there you go. You can play Pinocchio or you can watch Pinocchio in some form or another. So they've obviously decided that it's time for Pinocchio. I'll tell you what you probably found is that the what's it called? The copyright is probably up on Pinocchio because it's so old, and so everyone is now using it. Hey, another game. Let's talk about another game. Atlas Fallen is due out in 2023. Comes from Deck 13, the people who made The Surge. This, to me, I got Forspoken vibes from this.
Yes, I know what you mean. Something about like interesting traversal mechanics across a deserty, dusty environment that screams Forspoken. But it's still cool. It's got some interesting sort of like art direction, and the glimpses and glimmers we got of gameplay towards the end looked intriguing. I also just think that, I know we kind of poked a bit of fun at Lords of the Fallen earlier, but The Surge and The Surge 2 were interesting games that had interesting spins on that kind of Soulsborne style formula. And I'm curious to see where Deck 13 kind of take that next and how they can continue to carve out their own space within that genre. And I hope they do so.
Yeah, and then we had some Homeworld 3. Sorry,
can I interrupt you quickly?
Of course.
Did you see the 10 minutes of Forspoken gameplay that got put up yesterday?
No, I did not.
I'd recommend watching it because Forspoken looks like it's going to be a really weird game, but
we knew that, right? We knew that already.
We did know that, and we've been joking at its expense for a long time. But I've got to be careful what I say here. There is something about it in motion when everything kind of comes together. The parkour and some of the more higher detailed environments, and even some of the combat elements that I look at, and I'm like, there's a part of this that looks like it could be really fun. Cool. And I hope it is. And I will also say I was watching it immediately after like basically rage quitting Saints Row when it froze on me again. And I was just looking at it, was like, there's also levels to this where for as much we take the piss out of Forspoken, it looks like, but on a technical level, it's aspiring and trying to do something far more interesting and far more unique and far more original than just about anything Saints Row is doing. And maybe that's why I cut it, a bit more cloth, but yeah, an interesting one. I recommend anyone who is unsure, check out that just 10 minutes of gameplay. Kind of like an overview where they talk about, how open world traversal works and how combat works. It's very interesting. But it's also, I will say as an asterisk, it's being dunked on at the moment because some of the environments, especially the kind of the city-like structures and the kind of the places that you might go back to as something of a home base, look kind of rough, and there are extended sort of like conversation scenes with NPCs whose faces do not move very much or emote very much at all while they're talking, and it all looks a bit stilted and awkward, but that might just be Forspoken.
Yeah, it's hard to know until you actually sort of get it in context and you play the actual game.
Exactly,
how much of it that's actually where it sits and how it works. We got a bit of a trailer for Homeworld 3, which has been like 30 years in the making at this point, so hopefully, I can't remember I don't remember when Homeworld 2 was, but they're great games. I'm looking forward to those coming to Homeworld 3 coming out. It's been far too long. Very cool space RTS that you get to command just like legions of ships in your armada and blow the crap out of other people. So yeah, it's cool. Then we got a little bit of a taste of High on Life, which is the Justin Roiland game where you have I don't even know what they are. Slug aliens for guns and weapons and whatever. And there's a lot of Justin Roiland comedy going on in it. It's very Justin Roiland, isn't it, Jamie?
Yeah. And you know what? I'd love to sit down, and I can't remember if either of you or Chris sort of fill this criteria, but I'd love to sit down with someone who's a big sort of Justin Roiland advocate and someone who has watched all the Rick and Morty there is to watch and show them this clip and ask whether they are still on board with the Justin Roiland style of comedy and his writing and the voices he does and so on and so forth. I'm being very careful not to use any kind of leading or disparaging words at this stage. And yeah, check if they're still on board or whether they are beginning to reach their tether with that kind of stuff, or whether it is just consistently kind of like funny and entertaining for them. Because I think this is just one of those things where I'm slowly realizing that I'm in a relatively small group of people that from day one never really got into it. I'm not a Rick and Morty guy. It's not my sense of humor. And there's something about that voice that he does in all of his. It was the same with like Trover Saves the Universe and all those other things. Like the voice he does and the kind of the awkward umming and ahhing kind of patter that goes with it. And in I thought the knife, the Australian knife that talks about like slicing him up and cutting off his arsehole and stuff like that was funnier. Like, I get more of a kick out of that kind of thing. But at the same time, I was watching this clip thinking, do I want to play what looks like an average first-person shooter in the midst of a boss fight that looks like it's going on for way too long and also not changing or, like, switching things up nearly enough? And at the same time, all of my gear and all of my weapons, all my equipment are talking to me incessantly. Like, do I really have the tolerance for that? And I don't know if I do, Jonesy.
Yeah. Basically,
yeah.
There was a point at which I was watching the trailer and I thought to myself, wow, they've shown an awfully long boss battle where not a lot is happening except for this gun and this knife talking to you where it's just taking forever. I'm like, surely they're supposed to show you the most exciting parts of games in trailers and not make you sit through boring ass boss battles that you're like, wow, this is too long. This should have been over a long time ago. No, I'm totally with you. Like the gameplay that they showed there looked like mediocre at best, and it looks like they're relying on the patter and the script and stuff to really sell the game, which worries me a bit because I don't know how long I can take. I don't know what we're gonna do now. We're gonna go over here and then shoot this guy, and you're like that. That's funny for. I like Rick and Morty, but it's funny for half an hour. I don't know if I could sit through 12, 15, 20 hours of that. I really don't, especially if it's like you said, if it's just your stuff all talking to you incessantly and you getting like, I just want to do this, I just want to do that, I just want to play the game now, and you just want that stuff to shut up. Yeah, because and think how repetitive it's going to get as well. That's
the thing. Like, there's nothing wrong with taking comedians who have a certain stuff. Like last week, we were talking about South Park and how much the South Park games worked and how much they did a good job at translating that show's comedy into games by making sure the gameplay fundamentals were sound and it was still a very fun experience at its core, and B, making sure that the translation of their show's comedy to the game's comedy was consistent in terms of like it's the vessels, i.e. the characters are still the same and a lot of the same fundamentals are matched, but yeah, by there's just something a bit obnoxious and a bit too on the nose about making that brand of comedy's vessel be, in this case, your gun, or even if it's just different on a per gun basis. I don't even know what they're going to do or where they're going to take this, but there's something about that that's a bit too on the nose from a dude who I think whose sense of humor and whose comedy is a bit too kind of subjective as it is and a bit too divisive as it is. And like you said, why not put your leading foot first? Why not show off the best or most exciting piece of gameplay you have? Like, why not have the gameplay fundamentals be as tight and as well-rounded as they can be, and then put a layer of Justin Roiland over the top? I'm not suggesting that High on Life has worked the other way around or been developed the other way around, but if it has, I think that's a slippery slope.
Yes. No, I the only thing I'm hoping is that they chose the bit they chose because they're hoping that people aren't going to buy it because even though it is a good game, they hope that there's a lot of Justin Roiland fans out there who are like, I'm just going to buy this just to hear him chatting bullshit for like 20 hours. But
I think that was summed up by Geoff. Like, do you remember when they were live? He goes, any Justin Roiland fans in the house? And there was no noise. He goes, Rick and Morty, and then there's a cheer. Like, Rick and Morty can be a good show, and Justin Roiland can be a divisive comedian. Those aren't like, those aren't mutually exclusive ideas.
at this point, I have to say at this point that Geoff Keighley kept asking the crowd, "Are you excited for this game?" And I was just like, "Please stop saying it," because he said it a few times. And I'm sure there are loads of people excited for all of the games that are coming out, but the audience were just like, for some reason, they just weren't feeling certain stuff, and you were getting this like lackluster, and it was like, just stop it. You don't need to know if the audience are excited for it. Just if they cheer when you show off the footage, that's good. You don't need to try and like preempt it. But yeah. Oh well. Geoff was just trying. I'm being mean. Geoff was just trying to get the crowd involved.
It was his first crowd in years. He was trying to hype them up.
He was. He was probably like reveling in it because it's been so long.
True.
And do you know something? Someone else that I'm not going to be too mean about, and I'm gonna try and pick them up a bit. Telltale. I've been less than kind to Telltale games over the years, and Telltale's The Expanse is due out in summer 2023. But I'm giving more love in my life now to Telltale and their scripted. What do they even call them? Narrative games or something. I can't remember.
I don't know. Narrative-driven adventure games.
Something like that. But Tales from the Expanse is a set in space near an asteroid belt. You play I don't even know if she's the captain. You play a character whilst there's a mutiny on a ship, and your decisions will affect the crew and what is going to happen. And it looks cool. Also, this might have coloured my opinion of Telltale a little bit. Telltale are also working on a Star Trek game as well, so maybe that's why.
So you're planting the seed early enough that you're now pro Telltale, so that when the Star Trek game comes out, you haven't gone full turncoat and just swiveled on a dime.
No, that's not what I'm doing at all.
Okay, Jonesy. I look forward to hearing you play and love Telltale's The Expanse in summer of 2023.
Yes, I will be playing it the day one release. Killer clowns from outer space. That sounds terrifying, doesn't it?
As an idea for a video game, yes.
Yes, this is a game which is based on the VHS cult classic monster movie of the same name. It's going to be a 3v7 asymmetric multiplayer horror game from TerraVision, where you have 3 people playing as killer clowns from space who are going to be hunting the other 7 players who have to kill the shit out of them because clowns are evil, as we all know. This was very purgy, the trailer for this. It starts off with a kid in a house, and then a doorbell goes, and then you answer the door, and there's a crazy killer clown from space there about to eat your face. So I'm never going to play this. It already seems terrifying.
Do you know what, Jonesy? My hidden dark secret: I haven't played any of these horror multiplayer asymmetrical experiences thus far. I haven't played Friday the 13th. I haven't played Dead by Daylight. I know there's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre game coming. I know there's now this coming. I gather it must be a big deal and a big subgenre for players and content creators alike. But it's just not one that's really
I played a bit of Friday the 13th. I thought that was a cool concept and I quite enjoyed it, but I didn't get that into it, if I'm being honest. I think they're rough. It's rough. If you're not into it immediately, I think it's a rough genre to try and sort of get into.
And this one, it feels like, I don't want to disparage the good name of Killer Clowns from Outer Space, but this one has maybe a little bit more to do on the kind of the gameplay perspective, because that IP, that franchise won't do as much in terms of name recognition. And like a Friday the 13th game kind of draws people in. A Texas Chainsaw Massacre game draws people in. Killer Clowns from Outer Space, like that's a leap. Like, you've got to do some work there to draw people to that title.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Especially young gamers.
Yeah, but I mean, let's be honest, they're relying the scary clown idea just pushes people to it, aren't they? They're like, if you want to play something really scary, look, there are clowns. Clowns aren't that scary, so I don't know. I don't know if it'll work. It might work, might not work. Scars Above is a sci-fi action-adventure game that sees a huge alien structure appear in the sky over Earth, and then all hell breaks loose. It looks very Returnal.
Yeah, that was the vibe I got to in terms of there's alien shit going on. There's weird, like, things appearing in the sky and obelisks and things are getting all fucked up very quickly, and you might need to run around with a big gun to stop them doing so. That's the vibe I got. Scars above.
Scars above. And the worst pun in gaming. Scars above. Yeah, that's just
What is the pun there?
Scars above. It's like stars above, isn't it?
Oh, stars above. I didn't even get that.
I assumed it. I thought, oh, scars above, stars above.
Scars above just sounds like something your grandmother says when she's frustrated. Oh, scars above.
Scars above. So I can tell you why it's actually called Scars Above is because the Sentient Contact Assessment and Response Team, SCARS, consisting of scientists and engineers, are sent to investigate the metahedron, which is the large alien structure which lands, which flies above the Earth. And that's why it's called Scars Above, because they are scars. And they're above you in the metahedron.
See, that's one of those ones where they've just thought that scars sounds cool and they've made it stand for something, not the other way around.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
I prefer companies like Bungie who have the balls to make it have something that sounds cool when elongated, and it doesn't matter if it makes a word when it's shortened, like ODST.
Okay.
Do you know what, Jonesy? Orbital Drop Shock Troopers. The coolest fucking sequence of words of all time. Does it make an actual word when you shorten it down to its acronym? No, it doesn't. Do they care? No, they don't. ODST.
They did it anyway, ODST.
Yeah. We're going to do it anyway.
We are going to be treated to something called Word Song. Weird Song? I don't even know how you pronounce it. It's spelled strange. Which we didn't get to see much of, Jamie, but it is from some veterans of the gaming industry.
Yeah, developers of titles such as Fallout, Fallout 2, Fallout 3, Fallout 4, Fallout New Vegas, The Elder Scrolls, The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, The Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim, The Outer Worlds. Basically, they put it this way, this trailer really wanted you to know that people that made RPGs at Obsidian and Bethesda are working on Word Song.
Which is kind of weird because you'd think that they would put in some other titles from other people that are in the team as well, because they don't want you to just assume that you know exactly what this game's going to be like. Because if you read that list, you're like, oh yeah, I got it.
Yeah,
exactly. Whereas you want something else to be introduced into that. You kind of want to have a little bit of, oh, I wonder what this is going to be.
Yeah. There's also like nothing against any of these guys, and I'm sure they are all very talented in their own right. But there's like we've seen so many studios and games promoted off the back of from a veteran team of developers who have worked on titles such as this, and it's just like, well, what did they do and for how long?
Like that's such a good question. What did they do?
From the veteran who did 6 months of QA on GTA 5. Like, okay.
I think that in films when they go like from the producers of this movie, and you're like, okay, but like, or the executive producers, okay, so they put the money in. Like, that doesn't mean they're good at making films. It means that they hired the right people. Am I supposed to now be patting middle management on the back because they hire people well? Like, really?
From the third assistant director of the second Transformers.
Imagine that, yeah. That's a weird one. Would that put you off because it's Transformers, or would you be like, that dude had nothing to do with it, therefore this actually might be a good film?
See, that's the question.
It's always a good question. Gotham Knights did something pretty amazing, Jamie, which is it put together a good trailer, or it put out a good trailer, I should say, that made me think, oh, damn, maybe Gotham Knights is actually going to be good after all. And the way they did it is by just showing cinematics and not showing any gameplay. Because I don't want to be mean to Gotham Knights. I'm sure it's going to be fine, but I don't think they've had a very good showing when it comes to the gameplay trailer they've put out. I think they've had maybe an honest showing, and they've shown you what you're going to be doing, in fight to fight in this game. But maybe what was missing from some of those gameplay trailers where they released, Robin, Red Hood, they released some decent length gameplay stuff, was they were missing the story elements around why you're fighting the people you're fighting. And so what they've tried to do in this trailer here with Opening Night Live is they've shown off some other villains who are going to be showing up in the game. We've already seen Mr. Freeze, but this showed off a bit more of Harley Quinn and also Clayface. So I think it's actually doing some of the heavy lifting that needs to be done before Gotham Knights release in October, because they need to show off why you're going to be doing, or why you're going to be playing this game, why you're going to be returning to the Belfry. And I think this trailer was pretty good at, showing a bit more of that.
You're right. Maybe it was a cheeky move in some respects, but at the same time, like, they had a platform to show a trailer and they showed off a good trailer. I even thought like there was a point in the trailer very early on where a chair spins round and it's Harley Quinn, and I almost had like a sigh, here we go again kind of feeling. And actually, it didn't really bother me. Like it seems like a interesting enough and fine enough version of Harley Quinn. And I actually thought Clayface, beyond just being Clayface and doing Clayface things, looked really good. I thought the gooey kind of slimy elements of Clayface, like visually speaking, technically speaking, were actually really well done for whatever that's worth. Look, like especially in the wake of Saints Row, I'm really hopeful that Gotham Knights is able to do just about anything interesting. Obviously, I have some reservations based off what we've seen so far, but if they can pull something out of the bag, it doesn't have to be, the spiritual successor to the Arkham series at this rate. As long as it's just gets the fundamentals right, I'm hopeful that we get something solid out of that.
Well, what's funny about it, I think, is that when you talk about the Arkham series, right, and you want to sort of separate from that, you don't want to do the same thing. You want to take the good elements, but you want to then, do something completely different, which is what they're trying to do. It's fine as long as you get the fighting and the combat feels fun. It doesn't have to look as good. It doesn't have, it's going to look better, but it doesn't have to look the modern equivalent of how good those games looked. That's fine. But some of the things that Arkham did really well, I thought Arkham Knight did really well, was the driving around the city and facing other enemies inside of the DC universe. And I think that is what Gotham Knights needs to do. And I think that's why this was a smart trailer, because they've actually said, look, we're not going to be like Marvel's Avengers where you're going to be facing one enemy on repeat or two on repeat. I hope anyway, this is the first of, a few characters that you're going to get to face, you're going to get to see inside of that universe. This better not be exhaustive, because it's just these three characters. Then I will be annoyed.
I mean, don't
spoil it for me. Don't spoil it for me, Jamie.
I'm not going to spoil it for you.
I've only got my hope.
I don't know anything that you don't know, and so anything I did say would be speculation. But the vibe I got from this are like, here are the villains that are fundamental to the story, and you're going to be coming across. I don't think this is going to be some Arkham City or Arkham Knight like rogues gallery of DC villains. That's not the vibe I got from any of what.
Maybe not to that level. I'm trying to think, because you remember the end of near the end of Arkham Knight, you had like a pinwheel of different types of missions, and if it's kind of like that, and you can traverse the city fight,
bro, I'd be very, very surprised.
Really,
very surprised.
Oh, yeah. Right, you're making me sad again now.
I mean, I just don't think any one element that I've seen or read or heard or anything about Gotham Knights implies that that's what they're going for with this.
All they need to do though is do you know how Marvel have gone, hey, we're releasing a new playable character, right? We're putting out Black Panther, we're putting out who's the dude with the bow and arrow, whatever his name is. All I feel like DC need to do, or not DC, but Gotham Knights need to do, is they just need to say, hey, after a year, we're putting out a new enemy. It's Riddler. After another year, we're putting out another enemy. It's this. They just need to. That's what they need to do.
Wait, you want Gotham Knights to do that?
Yeah.
You want Gotham Knights to add new villains to the game like months after the fact?
As DLC, for sure. Yeah, I think that'd be wicked. I want it to start strong. I want it to start very strong. But I am so up for a pseudo game as a service in the DC world where they put in new DLC where you can get new enemies in that environment.
You're just asking DC to make a good Marvel's Avengers game?
No, because I think everything I've seen, they've got the groundwork is all there, right? The difference with Marvel's Avengers is one of the worst elements were the levels. It was like so repetitive and dull. I'm all up for, okay, you're in Arkham. They can play around with Arkham and they can do what they want, and it's always going to be Arkham. And then they're going to seed in new enemies. I think they could easily do that as DLC. Can they not? Would they not?
They could. I think I'm surprised to hear that you want Gotham Knights to be a live service game. That's just not the direction I thought this conversation was going to go.
Not live service, but like I would love to see. I'm hoping that it's not a one shot, one hit. Here are three villains, and then the game's done, and it was mediocre. I'd like to hear them say, "Oh, we're going to do DLC over the next however long, and it's going to introduce some new villains as well."
I guess it depends how they handle obviously the Arkham games had plenty of DLC. I guess it depends how they handle it. Like if it's an actual DLC, if it's like content, here's like, hey, here's a new story arc with Two-Face at the center of it, then that's cool. But I don't know, the live service stuff that you've wandered into there does scare me a little bit.
Not like
especially because this is already a game that has had to tiptoe around the fact that like this is numbers coming out of people's heads, and are you equipping gear there, my friend? What's going on?
It is a little. Although I do wonder how much of the game has been influenced by how badly received Marvel's Avengers was.
I mean, they'd be smart to pay attention to that. They would be smart.
Surely it's been influenced by that, but remains to be seen. Chinese developer Everstone are putting a action game out, Where Winds Meet. I don't remember anything about this one. What the hell is that? Where Winds Meet? I can't. This
is the you talked about it earlier as like reminding you of Black Myth Wukong, which is
I keep forgetting this is the name of the game. It throws me.
Yeah, Where Winds Meet, because it sounds like it's going to be like a Chinese romantic comedy. But not a romantic comedy, just a romance actually. But no, it is.
It would be a comedy. It's got to be a comedy. Come on,
Where Winds Meet. Nah, because I'm imagining like what are those like. I can't remember the name of the director, so I'm not even going to guess because I'm probably say something stupid. But like those classic Chinese romance films. But this is not that. This is not that. This is Where Winds Meet.
This is a quite flashy looking, cool hand-to-hand combat, flashy Chinese developed game, which does look a lot like Black Myth Wukong.
It's one of those things where, again, like we talked about it a number of times now. I don't know if it's the China element. I don't know if it's the engine element. So I can't even say with any confidence which engine this is running on. But it's always slightly strange when a game like this shows up and immediately looks very expensive. Now, this doesn't look as expensive or as technically advanced as Black Myth Wukong does. I will say the more you look at Where Winds Meet, the more there are some occasional rough edges where you're like, actually, this does look like a normal video game. But it's also like, it's got some cool stuff going for it.
Talking about Black Myth Wukong, did you see that the dev had got in a bit of hot water this week where they said they don't want women to play their game. They don't.
Oh, God.
They're not making a game for... that's those sorts of people. They're just making a game that men can play and enjoy. And so of course the reaction to that was, oh, so you're a bunch of incels making a game for incels, which was interesting little back and forward.
Andrew Tate's probably looking for a new revenue stream right about now. I guess we know where he went and worked. Andrew Tate presents Black Myth Wukong.
But yeah, you've got loads of people saying, "Oh, I'm never playing this game because of da da da." But okay.
That dev has said stupid stuff in the past, and admittedly, before it was largely translation issues that he got caught out with. But yeah, that is funny that he's done something stupid again. And if he did, I haven't heard those quotes myself, but just hearing you talk about it, they sound like incredibly stupid things to say.
I want to say it was worse as well because you had some people actually speaking Mandarin who translated the interview, and they said it was worse than just being sexist. It was like in one paragraph of the interview, it was like they said, pretty sure he's being homophobic, racist, and sexist all in one paragraph. So it's like, wow, okay, he's really going hard. Those devs over there don't really give a shit. We had a cool guest at Gamescom opening night live.
Was it the guy making Black Myth Wukong?
It was not. It was Hideo Kojima, who is making something, but it's not a game. It's a podcast, Jamie, called Brain Structure.
Oh, God. I knew as soon as I saw that like weird Spotify plaque in the corner of the room he was in, I was like, something's up. This dude's not here to show us a trailer or talk about a game or link to anything else that's cool. And yeah, I will say, Jonesy, they've put like an episode 0 up, like as a little kind of like teaser, like, hey, here's... welcome to Brain Structure. And I can tell you right now, even as a big Hideo Kojima fan, a stan maybe even on occasion, if the remainder of this podcast, if the actual episodes of this podcast have anything in common with this episode 0, whether it's the weird like robotic reverby effects they put on like the kind of the person introducing the show, or whether it's the monotonous robotic, like almost AI generated voice that dubs over Hideo Kojima, I'm not listening to it. Like it was shocking. It was atrocious.
What was funny was when he was talking about it, because he obviously doesn't speak English, right? He speaks Japanese. So
Correct.
When they were talking about it, my immediate first thought was, interesting. How are they going to handle the fact that he doesn't speak English? Are they going to just do it in Japanese and then they're going to dub it, or are they going to have someone come and like someone else do his almost like read his words, or how was it going to work?
It's interview style dub, so he starts talking, you hear him, and then the volume goes lower, and then an English voice dubs over the top. Yeah,
I don't need to hear that.
Yeah, no, you don't. And wait till you hear. Like you also just think to yourself, like if you're going to get someone to dub over to talk over Hideo Kojima, make them engaging. Make them someone I want to listen to. Someone who puts like emotes in any way, shape, or form. And like I genuinely, there were points where I couldn't tell if this was like a Siri style, translation thing. It's
it is AI though, isn't it? It's not an actual translation.
It's okay. It is AI. Okay, there you go.
I think it is AI. I think that's what they said. I think
then
it's
why?
Didn't they say at the time that it was like a live translation thing or something like that?
But it doesn't need to be. Like the first episode of this thing isn't out for 2 weeks. Why do we need a live AI translation? Just get someone to translate it and record a VO and put it over the top.
Maybe because they're worried that it won't be authentic. And you would say, why the hell am I listening to a podcast where someone translates what he said when they could just read the words as though they were saying?
At that point,
Hideo Kojima. So
yeah, exactly. And at that point, you're talking about every single other piece of like podcast or audio or video material, and there is a lot of it that Hideo Kojima has ever produced. There are entire series on YouTube of stuff that like people don't really know about because they never got translated, and you can watch it all now with subtitles, so it's quite engaging. But like, I don't know. I thought the thought of like Spotify and Hideo Kojima actually coming together to make a real like legit stab at this, I'd have thought they come up with a more elegant and easy listening solution for some of these problems. Disappointing.
Yes. No, yeah, it is a weird one for sure.
See if it changes before episode 1 though.
Yeah, and it may well do, because obviously it is, like you said, is a episode 0, so maybe they're actually trialing a few things and seeing what the reaction of the public is before they go live.
Fucking hope so, man.
Limbic Entertainment have a new theme park sim, which looks pretty cool. If you like theme park, you'll probably love this. And that was the last time I played a roller coaster tycoon style game. So yeah, it looked cool. Yeah. You get to ride the rides. That's one thing I always look for in a roller coaster tycoon style game. Can you ride the rides in first person? Which it does look like you can.
It's a must-have.
One of the most exciting things of the entire evening, though, Jamie, was the announcement of the Ace Man concept car. A collaboration with Mini and Pokemon. It is the official vehicle of gamers that's never going to be released as an actual car because it's a concept car, but it's going to come out in some form. Are you insanely excited? Are you going to get yourself an Aceman as soon as they drop it?
I have already remortgaged the house I don't own just to buy this car. This is one of those moments where you don't know whether to sigh or laugh, or then sigh and laugh, and you don't know. This is like easily wins the award for the most ill-conceived and ill-judged segment of the entire live stream. And yet, I don't really feel like the blame falls on Geoff for this. The blame falls on Mini for completely like misunderstanding who their audience is and where their audience resides, both in terms of the concept car they've generated and how they are actively promoting it, which is, like weird promotional videos with a bunch of young models like sitting around and laughing while, climbing and lying all over a car, like a weird Pikachu dashboard that seems to be the only, fundamentally sort of like gaming or gaming adjacent addition that they've made to what is an actually rather ugly looking car from the outside anyway. And all the talk about like the way it sort of links to, like vague chat about it linking to game systems, like what, none of it was elaborated on or discussed in any real tangible way. Just what a bizarre thing this is.
So I actually watched another video after the after opening night live about the Aceman, and because it wasn't a gaming related video, it was just about the Aceman. It was an interview that someone was doing with the same guy actually who was talking to Geoff about it. There was no mention of anything gaming related whatsoever.
Great.
And the dashboard, which has a project, so on the dash you have like a disc OLED screen, which has all of your information on your instrument display. There are elements from that are then projected onto the dashboard either side of it, so you get like weird shapes and stuff moving across the OLED display. And when they move off the side, and you can like move them as well with the OLED's a touch display, you can sort of like throw them and they'll then be moving around on the dashboard, like projected from above. Yeah, that literally is the only. I think they just put in some pictures of Pikachu. for this to make it.
Because it's all electric, right?
Gamer car. Yeah, it's an electric car, which is going to have loads of stuff fundamentally changed. I think they actually said how much of this is going to be retained when the car's actually released. And they're like, well, the roof's going to go. The funky front lights are going to be different. We're going to lose it has speakers all around, like outside the car, which are all going to go.
Outside the car?
So you're basically going to end up with an electric Mini that looks just like an electric Mini with an OLED display in the middle. Like, it's nothing to do with gaming.
No, the way I described it to you at the time was like it's Homer Simpson's car from the future being sold to people who do not have the interest in that product or the money to buy it. And it's not even a product that can be bought. It's a concept. Just a stupid segment.
I'm going to give it to Geoff. He probably got paid a lot of money, or GamesCom probably got a lot of money to allow Mini to be there to do that.
That's why I said that the fact that this was ill-judged is entirely on Mini, and that's just them like not reading the room in terms of what kind of event this was and who they were going to be communicating with. But I'm all down for Geoff getting paid and making shows like this happen through segments like this. I've got no qualms with that.
Yeah, no, sure. And it wasn't. If they'd have just like sodded off all of the gaming adjacent, Pokemon adjacent stuff, I think it probably would have been better because that just made it seem so obvious that it was.
Yeah,
bollocks.
At least then you're just being transparent and be like, hey, here's a car, a concept car, I guess, and it's going to come out one day, and maybe you'll be old enough and rich enough to buy it by that point. Don't like pander to us by saying, look, it's got Pikachu on the dashboard, and you can bring your game console inside it.
I would have loved it if they'd have said, "There's a Nintendo Switch that you can pull out and play while you're driving," and you were like, "Wow, that's insanely dangerous."
Exactly.
But if they were
Whereas, like, well, I can't play my Nintendo Switch and drive at the same time, and if the objective of the game was to not drive and play my Nintendo Switch, I can already do that with my current car by stopping the car and playing my Nintendo Switch, which I already own.
Yep. There you go. Okay, last few bits from ONL. We had the Outlast Trials, which looked pretty terrifying, which, I'm never going to go anywhere near this game either, Jamie. I don't know why they keep doing it to me, these horror games. They're far too terrifying. I don't like it.
They're out there for someone. They're the right game for someone. They're not the right game for us, clearly.
No, definitely not. I'm trying to even remember the trailer for this because I blocked it out. Of my
this
mind
was the one that
I
it kind of had like some Saw style stuff going on. Lots of experiment, lots of like weird close-up shots of exposed necks after decapitations and people putting their hands into open wounds. Yeah, exactly. Looks pretty gruesome. And Outlast is already kind of scary, so no thanks. Unless I have to do it for a video or a live stream or something. Unless I'm forced into it.
Unless we make you play it, just so we can get your amazing reaction.
You never know. I've been forced to go on camera and play horror games before, and one of them was an Outlast game. So never say never.
It was, yes. It's just mean. I don't know why we do it to you. It's not very nice.
Entertainment, apparently.
The Finals is a new shooter that was very near the end of the show from Embark Studios. Jamie, actually, you had an interesting bit to say about this. I'll let you say it because I'm not going to ruin it.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to point out for people that didn't know that Embark Studios were the new team that I think is headed up by former EA executive Patrick Soderlund, and they announced their, at the time, first game. I think at the Game Awards last year, it was actually one of the closing games called Arc Raiders, which for anyone that doesn't remember, it's kind of like the cooperative third-person shooter where it seems like you're kind of in a post-apocalyptic environment that is now filled with big robots that roam around on kind of 4 legs and 8 legs. Basically, these big robotic things that you're kind of teaming up to take down. That was apparently going to be a free-to-play title that was due out sometime this year. Embark announced, I think about a month ago, that Arc Raiders, unsurprisingly, was not going to come out this year. But in fact, another title would be coming out sooner than Arc Raiders, and we now know that to be The Finals, which we don't know much about it other than it's kind of I think a free-to-play competitive shooter wrapped in sort of a game show style format. But yeah, it seems as though The Finals now coming out before Arc Raiders, so we'll see what that ends up looking like probably over the next, well, hopefully inside the next year. Otherwise, Arc Raiders is even further away than we'd anticipated.
Yeah, you wonder if it's the fact that they were like, hey, look, Arc Raiders is going to take us so long to finish that we're going to push 2 games back, whereas at least we can get one finished and get it out before we finish off the other one. So Hey,
And what you'd say for like, I don't know how big that team is and kind of who's funding the stuff and where the money's coming from, but Ark Raiders was a game that visually and technically looked very impressive right from the rip, and we didn't see much of the finals in gameplay terms because of the way this trailer was edited, but the glimpses we did get also looked quite sharp. They've got a cool, art direction, a cool kind of aesthetic about everything they've produced thus far, so clearly an interesting team making projects that are worth keeping an eye on. I'm not sure how I feel about everything they've made thus far, everything they've announced thus far being free to play, but I guess that's just the nature of the beast at the moment.
Yes, no, for sure. Jamie, there was one last thing at ONL that got ruined.
One last big. Oh, I was going to say one last big surprise. Surely
It should have been a big surprise, but we actually talked about it on last week's podcast because it got leaked by. Did we say it was Amazon?
Yeah, I think it was an Amazon listing. It was certainly a retail listing because it had, the big blurb and the box art and screenshots and so on and so forth.
We are, of course, talking about the Dam Buster developed game published by Deep Silver, and that is Dead Island 2, which is going to be coming out in February of 2023. Luckily, the cinematic trailer that we got to see from ONL wasn't leaked, and we did actually get to see a very cool trailer which seemed to keep some of that sort of humor that Dead Island had and showed off the new LA environment that they're going to be in, that kind of like pulp Hollywood kind of I can't remember the word I'm trying to think of. Oh, well. You get to kill a lot of Hollywood-style people in some cool, gory fashions. We got to see some gameplay as well because they showed off a gameplay trailer at the end, which was so gruesome that they had to pixelate a lot of the worst deaths, like people's faces getting blown off.
Had to is, I think, a generous way of putting it.
Well, yeah, had to make you go and watch the trailer online that was not censored.
Yeah.
But look, I thought it looked wicked. I thought this looked exactly like what Dead Island 2 should be. I hope that they've spent the time wisely since the original and that they've come up with some cool ideas, some cool ways to keep people engaged. It's effectively like they said, you become the zombie killer you want to be and dispatch zombies in the coolest and most fun way possible. Yeah,
I think there's a lot of promising stuff here. Yeah, I think I agree with you. The cinematic trailer was a nice sort of like little sort of like a tone, I guess, kind of reveal, if nothing else, and reiterating that it is hitting a lot of those notes that we hoped it would hit when we talked about this game last week, in terms of really embracing the kind of the potentially comedic and sort of slightly trashy sides of LA and that sort of like Beverly Hills environment, and whether it's through enemy design or just the outrageousness of the combat and the gruesomeness of the combat, playing that stuff for laughs where there's room to, especially as a way of further differentiating itself from Dying Light 2, which has increasingly gone in a slightly darker, more serious direction. I thought the gameplay trailer they showed off was interesting. It certainly looks quite good. It's got that really unique, sort of hyper realistic, especially when it comes to the faces and the performance capture stuff, but like it almost uncanny valley territory. It reminded me of a trailer, I don't know when it was, maybe a year or two ago, for Stalker 2, where you're like, God, these faces look really good, but in a way that kind of like I'm distracted by the fact that they kind of look good.
Right.
And I guess that's kind of like a backhanded compliment in a weird way, and I don't mean that to be a negative thing. It's just something that caught my eye. The gameplay itself, the fundamentals looked fine, like the little snippets we got of the melee combat and some of the range combat looked solid. And it's interesting, when they talk about the game and you piece it together with a gameplay trailer that we got, it's clear that they are going for this direction that, like you said, is all about allowing you to kind of create the zombie killing character that you want to create, and using the wacky weapons that are probably going to be, pieced together in classic zombie game fashion that we used to, and creating big gory spectacles and fun and interesting ways to kill lots of people in very gruesome fashion. And that's fine, but I am also more interested in sort of like, what are the overarching fundamentals of Dead Island 2? Like, what is their attempt at the story going to be like? They've clearly got lots of characters that we saw a decent chunk of that cast in the gameplay trailer. How do they all kind of fit together, and what have they all got to offer? And what are the kind of the broader hooks here? This is an open world game, I think, of some nature, and what are they? We sat here and talked about Saints Row ad nauseum at the top of the podcast. What are the open world hooks that are present in Dead Island? That's the kind of stuff I want to see more of next. But this was a solid first showing and a solid, I guess this is important, reintroduction, right? It had to not just say Dead Island 2 is still in development. It had to say Dead Island 2 is still in development and kind of like metaphorically put its dick on the table in gameplay terms. And I think it just about did enough of that to now be officially back on the menu and is now something that people can look at as, a game that's coming out in February, which isn't that far away, and say like, yeah, I believe this is real. I believe that development restarted 4 years ago and they've, gone in this new direction and it looks the way it looks and I'm down for it.
Yeah, no, me too. I think they've done exactly what they needed to. It's a little bit of a shame that we heard about it just before the show and that it got leaked a little bit. I'm sure Geoff wasn't too happy, but hey, it still had a kick-ass trailer and fingers crossed that it all goes according to plan and they can get the release out for, like you say, February 2023, because that is not long at all. And I, for one, will be really looking forward to playing it. So fingers crossed, Jamie, fingers crossed. Well, we've been going for over 2 hours. Should we call it there?
You're the hostess with the mostest, my friend.
Yeah, we had a couple of other stories that we could talk about, but do you know what? I think we can bump them to next week and we can talk about them. I don't think they're going anywhere.
That is wishful thinking. I think they're going to go exactly one way, and that is in the bin, because the gaming world moves fast, my friend.
I don't think it will. I don't think these stories will go anywhere. I think there'll be something that we'll mention next week, but we'll talk about them now for about half an hour. So no, I don't have time for that because it's very late and I'm very tired.
Yeah, cool.
So thank you so much, Jamie. Chris, I'm sure will be back next week. Thank you everybody for watching. If you would like to join our Patreon, don't forget that we're at patreon.com/SuperShow. We're also on Twitter and YouTube. You can reach out to us at SuperShow Pod. Drop us a DM, drop us a comment, do all of that good stuff. Rate us if you're on a podcasting platform. And thank you so much for watching. And we will see you again next time.
Bye.
See ya.